So, Neil, we're starting off this podcast by unconventionally looking through our season predictions and marveling at how much of them we got right. Um,
Holy fuck.
so, I'm even trying to get grasp who was the closest, and I don't think any of us were. Um, on average, we all overestimated the success that West Ham was going to have.
Underestimated Newcastle.
Indeed, we all definitely got Chelsea.
Didn't see Brighton coming.
No, we didn't, and neither did Villa actually. Definitely, Chelsea's woes were not anticipated either. To be fair, we did think they were going to have a kind of a relative struggle under Bowley, but not to the extent that we had. And certainly, again, the surprise packages were the likes of Villas, and well, actually, in fairness, we all thought Villa was going to do quite well, just not seventh.
We got all of our relegation.
But not one of you had Brighton, Hove.
Yep, we don't have.
Where is Brighton and Hove in your predictions?
So Brighton we have down 13th, 12th.
I have Brighton 10th
and 10th respectively. Yeah.
And the Journals had them 12th.
12th. So now this is before Potter moves on and De Zerbi comes in and kind of arguably makes the team better. So, yes. But that certainly wasn't anticipated. He did fix things, and we kind of all were kind of, I suppose, expecting Tottenham to be top four with Conte having his season before the meltdown happens, but deliciously the meltdown happened during the season, which actually, if anything, saved time, which was which was good.
Such glee in that.
But it's funny though. It is a funny little subplot to the whole thing,
I don't know whether it's funny or whether it's depressive.
Well, if you're a Spurs fan, it's certainly depressive. But I suppose
or Chelsea fan.
Or Chelsea. Well, that's also true. But again, you could attribute a lot of that down to the ownership. And
does Neil want to make me cry?
I don't know, Neil. Do you want to make Kira cry? Is that what your intention there is?
It's not us making her cry, right? It's not us making her cry, right? It's Chelsea and their three managers. It's Todd Bowley making her cry. That's who she needs to blame. Todd Bowley. Can
you get rid of him? Can I get Ted Lasso, please?
I get going. I'm presuming going by how the season I think is going to go. He might be around.
I'll hire him.
Yeah, do. So with that in mind, Neil. So let's go through the respective table as it is now settled with our last match day in the bag. We can confirm, lamentably, the Manchester City are champions. After another steamrolling to the end. Arsenal, however, a very valiant second, which we'll get into shortly. The Champions League slots are filled by Manchester United rather, and Newcastle, who have ended their long European drought since 2012, I want to say. Could be wrong on that one. Don't quote me on that. Liverpool drop out of the Champions League spots for the first time since Klopp's first season in charge. They'll be joined by Brighton, who are joining the European party for the first time in their history. And Aston Villa are going to be in the Conference League this year, which means Spurs lose out unless, of course, there's some permutations in between that benefit West Ham and so forth. More on that as we get it. The top 10 then is filled out by Brentford and Fulham. And Crystal Palace finish ahead of Chelsea. And I think, again, this is a weird stat. I think it's the first time in Fulham and Crystal Palace's history that they both finished ahead of Chelsea, which I think is a fascinating stat. And again, we'll get into that in this kind of proverbial autopsy of the Premier League season we've had. Wolves and West Ham, who were involved in the relegation scrap from the majority of the season, marked themselves quite safe in the run-in. Likewise did Bournemouth, which is a very much a surprise because we all had them earmarked, including the journals, to go down. And in most cases, actually, to be bottom of the Premier League. So they've certainly tipped the balance away from them. Nottingham Forest, which we all surprisingly, outside of yourself, Neil, thought was going to survive. So myself and Burtbot got that one right. However, you thought they were going to be bottom. And as again, booking the trend somewhat, even though we were technically one position off. Everton, we all had them to finish 18th this season. But they finished 17th. They survived.
In all fairness,
with 1 point.
Goal away from actually getting that spot on.
Exactly.
Fucking away.
But certainly, I think going by our current our league position shall we say, predictions. The biggest shock you might say is probably Leicester. Now I had earmarked Leicester to just about survive, which was in 17th, which was scarily accurate. However, Burpot and yourself, Neil, thought that Leicester were going to be relatively safe, even if they were in the second half of the league table. And indeed, the journals got it certainly very wrong, but they believed they'd finish ninth.
Yeah.
So certainly a big shock to them, and they'll be looking to pick the bones off that, as we will be in this. Leeds and Southampton, neither of us, all three of us, didn't earmark to be relegated this season. We all thought they were going to be surviving this season, but they're also gone as well. So three rather kind of significant teams in Premier League lore are gone and championship bound this season. But that is the league table as it stands. So let's probably start off then, Neil, if we can. Obviously, Manchester City are champions. There's no sugarcoating it. It is something that we've kind of expected as an inevitability over the season. And again, we have had a bit of a break in between podcasts, and we haven't been able to discuss the midpoint really of how it went. But there's a lot of discourse about how the running was going to go. We know that Man City are normally impervious around this time, and they certainly were again this season. From an Arsenal perspective, though, how do you feel the running has gone? Along with, I suppose, the proverbial collapse, falter, what kind of word would you describe at Arsenal compared to Man City's just constant barrage of points that they were scoring?
Well, I think it's just a reversion to the norm. I mean, they've got two first-string teams. We've only got one. You know, I think it was pointed out. I think I pointed out in the Arse blog or something like that. That the wage bill difference between City and Arsenal is 125 million pounds, and that is the equivalent of 11 players each on 200k a week.
Yeah,
and that's the difference. Really, they could rotate. They can rotate with no discernible loss in quality. They can lose players with no real discernible loss in quality. And we simply really just, we can't. There's lots of areas where we don't have depth. Centre back being one. Full back either side. We were struck massively by injuries. Midfield, centre mid, we just no fucking depth at all. Desperately trying to get Vieira to play to form, but it's his first season. So and up front as well, the drop off in quality there at centre forward from Jesus to say Nketiah is quite marketable. So hence why we were actually fielding Trossard there for quite a while, because the drop off is far less pronounced with him, even though he wasn't originally bought to be played as a centre forward. He was originally bought to be a wide forward cover. But hey, fuck it. That's the thing. Like, they can field basically two specialist players in every single position. They can afford to pay for two specialist players in every single position, whereas we're stuck with basically generalists. Who are, by the way, are exceptional players. Like Trossard's a wonderful player, but the main reason we bought him is because he can play across that front three. He can play at every single position across that front three. Same with hell, even the Kiwior, like he plays mostly. We have him fielded down as a centre back, but in his last season at Spezia, he was played mostly as a defensive mid.
It's kind of number 6, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, he can cover multiple positions, and that's kind of what we like. When you can't get specialists in each position, you're getting cover specialists like that, and that you can't maintain the punishing end season run that we needed.
Yeah, and I think I think as well, going into this season as well, I don't think anyone really expected the run that Arsenal were going to go on. Like, by far, certainly, I suppose another big kind of contributing factor, if you can call it that, is actually the impact of the World Cup having as a enforced mid-season break. Because I think if you didn't have that break, I think would have Arsenal have continued that form, because by far and away the best team in the league at that stage. But that's also judging the league on 14 games. So it's kind of hard to quantify how much of an impact would have happened. Would Man City's tear happened earlier, later? Like, it's very hard to decide.
Oh yeah,
you know.
absolutely. I mean, but what you can't deny is that it had a huge effect.
Mm,
So I mean, we were saying prior to I think even prior to the league starting, that it would essentially be a league of two halves, pre-World
yeah,
Cup and post-World Cup, and those two would be markedly different in results. And fuck it, they really were. Like,
yeah.
you look at the table coming up to the World Cup and the table at the end. I was like, holy fuck, they're totally different.
Mm,
So it's yeah, it's difficult to quantify how much of an impact it had. Well, it definitely had a huge impact on Arsenal because our talismanic centre forward wound up getting fucking injured for fucking 4 months
yeah.
at the World Cup. So it definitely had an impact on us. Um, so yeah,
So would you say that's kind of the story of your title challenge, as it were, was losing those very key players at the wrong time? Because obviously Jesus going for 4 months, and to Arsenal's credit, I think he made the most of it, because the likes of
oh yeah,
Nketiah important goals, Odegaard and Saka ran the team. I think from an outsider, it seemed like more so Saliba was the one that really kind of cost the league. If you want to quantify it, let's say, like losing Saliba as your talismanic centre back, I think was the biggest loss this
yeah. It was
season.
just it was more so it broke up that kind of centre back partnership we had with Gabriel Magalhaes,
Yeah.
and the drop off in quality between from Saliba or Gabriel to
Mm.
Rob Holding, who God love him tries, but like he's not the depth that we need. Kiwior, a little too early to tell, but he's tidy enough. He's big. He gets about. Um, Fair play to him. He tries really hard. So the jury's still out on him, but
Yeah.
the verdict's back on Holding that he's not up to this. So yeah, I think losing Saliba. Also, the issues we had at fullback as well, like the constant rotating around that left back, the switching from Zinchenko, the team relying on what Zinchenko did to the complete to trying to get Tierney to do what he does. Then at right back, when he had to field Ben White, who's been fucking brilliant, but then
Mm.
trying to get in cover for him in the form of Tomiyasu, who wound up being played the opposite side. It was crazy, you know. Um, and also but it was also midfield as well. Like our centre midfield is very much propped up by both Xhaka and Partey. And Partey, I think I saw a stat there, has only been available for 52% of the minutes that he was for the club. And given how integral he is to how we play, that's you're never gonna like you can't you can't build a house on 52% of a foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he can. It's not going to turn out well. And to be
Not for
honest,
half the house anyway.
yeah. So and to be honest, like, and that was it. So again, as it's strength and depth is where we suffered, and we kind of knew that. I think we sort of banked towards the end of the season, try like, look, we can't sort it out. We got scuppered everywhere we turned, kind of, in the January transfer window.
Yeah,
Although
because you kind
we
of
definitely,
got stalwart with the Casado deal, wasn't it? So it just
yeah,
didn't cross the line. Yeah.
like the Mudrick thing, yeah, people make a big deal out of this, but I'm quite happy to see Chelsea get rinsed over that. But I think it was the not getting Caicedo that really fucked us. Not fucked us, but I think that's the impact there.
Mm.
Jorginho's been a great stand-in. Don't get me wrong, I like the guy now. But
Not 6 months ago you didn't.
but it
But he
it's
was a strange
strengthened.
one though, wasn't he? Like he definitely seemed like the second or third choice. I know like Arteta would liked him tactically because of what he provides to the team
Yeah, well,
into the
apparently,
leadership
yeah,
thing.
we
But
were saying that as we signed them, like in the podcast we did after the January transfer window ended. Apparently,
yeah,
Arteta had been trying to get Jorginho in since he became first head coach
yeah.
um at Arsenal. Apparently, he was trying to vie for him when he was still at City, when he
I
was
believe so, yeah.
yeah,
City were always linked to Jorginho, and I think it
yeah,
was solely because, as I said, Arteta was a huge proponent for him. Again, he probably sees something in him as a player this season, Jorginho, because Arteta was more of the was a very cerebral midfielder himself. Like he wasn't
yeah.
necessarily tricks and thrills, but what he was a metronome. He would keep the ball moving. Like our equivalent would be Henderson, whereas like
Yeah.
some Liverpool fans don't understand why Henderson's important in the team. The reason is like somebody has to make those cheap passes and keep the ball rolling. And that's
Keep
what
the ball
Henderson does.
recycling. That's the thing. I
Yeah.
remember, I think it was Ken Early laughing about like Jorginho saying this guy's absolutely impossible. How do you tackle somebody who keeps passing the ball the instant he gets it perfectly? It's like you can't tackle, you can't even press that guy because the ball he's just gonna pass the ball, and you're like, oh well, I've got nothing else to do here, until he gets the ball back and he's gonna pass it again first time every single fucking time. And I think that's pretty much what Arteta likes in him. But yeah, it was just we banked on the final run, injuries either not happening or not upsetting the apple cart too much, and it turned out they derailed it, and
Yeah.
that was just it, and there was nothing we can really do about it.
But see, this is what always frustrates me about the sheer existence of Manchester City, because I think in a normal season where if you didn't have them in the league, or certainly if they weren't as dope financially as they clearly are, then the fact that they are able to lump 40 million at Leeds to just have Calvin Phillips be one of their English players, or
Yeah,
likewise be able to both have Erling Haaland and Julian Alvarez, the two best strikers, young strikers in the world outside of Mbappe, just available whenever they need it. And again, Alvarez for the vast majority was a stand-in when Haaland basically didn't fancy scoring goals. So when you have an embarrassment of riches, and as you said, you essentially have two first-string teams available, and Pep then, because he has this ability, or he doesn't have an ability as such, but he has this luxury of tweaking to find the perfect system. And so it's easy to find the perfect system when you literally have the perfect players. When you are able to, like, when you wake up in the morning and like, so compared to like other people's seasons, when you have like Arsenal who are going, how are we going to manage without Gabriel Jesus? Let's get Nketiah primed up and get him firing goals and whatever it is. And obviously the training has to change to get Nketiah up to speed. Or Liverpool having like 11 players that are injured at one point in the season and thinking, how the fuck are we going to get this going? Okay, we're just going to rely on a 16-year-old number 6 and somehow this is going to work. But with Pep Guardiola, he wakes up in the morning, has his fucking brand, because he sounds like a brand guy, I'll be honest. And he goes, who should I play out left today? Should it be Jack Grealish? Should it be Phil Foden? Or should I just put in John Stones because I feel like a madman today? And these are the questions he has to ask. This is the toughest his season got, essentially, was trying to see, how do I stop bombing wingers in the league? And what he did was basically flood his backline with centre backs, basically out of a massive fuck you to João Cancelo. Like
yeah.
that was the toughest thing he had this season, outside of like what a few points dropped, a few calamitous losses. So I feel very annoyed in a sense, because this is a regulation season for Man City. They didn't have to break a sweat this year, especially with Haaland like breaking every record possible, and this is going to be the norm now every year. I fear, because a team like Arsenal will come around and will be that kind of like romantic choice for a championship, in the same way that Kevin Keegan's Newcastle side was, in the same way that the Brendan Rodgers Liverpool team was for me, because those teams are fundamentally flawed. They wear their flaws on their cuff, in a sense, where with the Liverpool side, if anything happened to Luis Suarez, the whole thing collapsed. With Kevin Keegan, they were just so attack minded. They didn't give a fuck about defending. So when it actually came down to when the goals dried up, the goals kept getting conceded. So that was always going to happen. And with Arsenal, kind of the same kind of situation almost, where like once you lost those 2 or 3 critical players, the whole thing falls apart. But I think this team, I would have loved to see this team win the Premier League. I think just for the sheer quality of football they were playing at certain points, I still think they were the best footballing side in the league outside of Man City. Man City, I think, are very tedious at times, and they kill football sometimes by just over constant possession, because they're just so afraid of losing the ball and giving away chances. Whereas at Arsenal, there was a certain level of risk taking because they were that young and cocky in a sense, and there's a certain arrogance to them. But the speed they played the ball at was tremendous, especially at the start of the season. So I feel very hard done, but I feel sorry for Arsenal fans in a sense, because I would have loved this team to be a Premier League winning side, But in this day and age where Man City almost take the fun out of football, for me, um, it's very hard to celebrate anything that they do. And I've said this over the season, to be fair, but I think any objective fan watching the league would, if they went for Manchester City, I want to question their actual like their love of football, because a one-team league never suits. And now we're also staring at the barrel of a potential treble with Man City winning the FA Cup and the Champions League. And the only hope we have next season is that Pep Guardiola basically gets bored from that and leaves and wants to do it somewhere else. And that's that. And if he doesn't do that, if he just gets basically more money from this state-sponsored project that he has, there's not really any hope for any of us. Really, it's an arms race at the end of the day, and a lot of clubs like Arsenal and like Liverpool get priced out of it, and that's kind of the reality of it. Would you agree with that, Neil?
Yeah, to a degree. Yeah, I mean, with the arms race, you've got Newcastle in there as well. Now, granted, Newcastle's upturn doesn't really have a tremendous amount to do with the fact that they're now owned by a nation state as well. Although that
It
really
will eventually. That's the reality of it. It will
eventually, and it's just, and who knows what's happening with Man United? That's not been finalized as of yet as to who's actually going to buy them. So that's insane. Like that's three of the top four, current top four, And again, like you can turn around and say, well, Arsenal aren't exactly, um, shining beacons of ownership. We've got fucking the Cronkies, I'm like, So yeah, it is an arms race, and if I don't know, it just lots of it depends on the charges,
Yeah. We are paying to say this is like 115 charges to the name, and that's before 2019. So there's still
yeah.
3 4 years going up here. So,
But the thing is, like, what I was saying there when we did the cast when these charges were initially brought, I was like, they really do need some speed and resolution to this because what we had a couple of weeks ago, well, a week or two ago, is the head of the FA presenting winners' medals to a group of players on a team that he is basically outright accused of being like serial cheaters. It's like what the fuck? Like that is farcical. That is hilariously stupid. And that can't be allowed to occur. That can't be allowed to continue. Like you certainly can't do that again. Like, granted, they'll probably write it off themselves and go, well, we wrote the charges mid-season. We can't really change that whole fucking thing. But they can't do that again, and especially not if they do the treble. Like, holy fuck! Like, if they win the treble, and like that's it. Like, it's all off. That's how they beat these charges. Even if it goes back guilty and they get everything stripped from them, that's how they build these charges. They've got the treble. They only want the second team to do it in the Premier League.
Yeah,
that's it. That's how they do it. And that's why there needed to be some swift resolution to this, but that's never going to happen with City because what they do is obfuscate and
slow everything down.
So yeah, and that's just the thing. Like I think and that's just City. What happens when they try and enforce rules against Newcastle or Man U if they're bought out by another nation state? How are they going to enforce rules if they can't handle City? How the fuck are they going to handle three of them? Like, if they can handle one club, one sports wash club, how are they going to handle three? They're not going to be able to. It's literally going to be like the FA will just be a figurehead totem.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why, like, again, in a very morbid way, you have to make an example of Man City to kind of ward the rest of them off. But like I said, this has always been any kind of sports writer worth their salt is reminding us that the Premier League Premiership has always been a money accelerating program. It's always been, let's monetize English football to an almost nth degree, and we are now at the nth degree. We're at the stage where nation states are looking at the Premier League and going, let's buy a club and compete with our rivals. Like, this is like when we talk about Man City, Manchester United, Newcastle United, there's a part of me that feels sorry for those particular fans because their names are kind of taken in vain a little bit.
No.
Like,
I know what
you're trying to say.
They're happy. You've got Newcastle fans that are hopping around in fucking like headscarves and shit like that.
I know, yeah.
You've got Man City fans literally piling in on every fucking journalist that even dares to point out the fact that, their finances are like, might as well be written by fucking Dr. Zeus. You've got loads and loads of fucking Manchester United fans desperately wanting to be bought out by a nation state, despite the fact that they're already the richest club. They're already they can already compete with Man City. They don't need to be bought out. So I don't feel any sorrow for the fans. I really don't.
Yeah, fair enough. And again, that's my argument would be that like it's it's not the club that like they would have grown up with. It is just an arm of something more insidious. But again, we can talk about these other things. Speaking of actually Manchester United and Newcastle, they occupy the top four now at the moment, and two very different seasons as well. Curiously enough, both tied somewhat to the League Cup final, which was I suppose like an acid test for both teams. Newcastle making it to the final for the first time in years. Like I think actually 30, 40 years, I think it was, which is an incredible stat in its own right. And then Man United kind of breaking their kind of trophy duck after since Louis van Gaal, if I'm not mistaken, or was it Josie? I can't recall. I think it was Josie who won the last their last piece of silverware, the Europa League.
Yes.
And again, that seems that's quite a long time for Manchester United being the silver winning juggernaut that they normally are. But it was quite a seminal moment for Manchester United. And then again, this podcast is coming out before they face their Manchester rivals in the FA Cup, so they could very well make it a league double. And again, a lot of people in football are probably hoping that they do. But it's an interesting one because this has been it's been a very eventful season for Manchester United and particularly for Eric Ten Hag. And again, this is coming from a Liverpool fan who are looking across the water, as it were, and thinking he has done very, very well to steady the ship here, considering that there are genuine, actual clowns trying to steer it for him. Between the Glazers doing their own thing, between the director of football learning on the job, and players being recruited left, right, and centre, and then all during all this, he's had to manage the likes of Harry Maguire, at stages Bruno Fernandes, and chief amongst them being Cristiano Ronaldo, and having the balls to stare to square up to Ronaldo and go door out, fuck is a level of management that is a prerequisite for most people. But in the last couple of years at United, particularly under Solskjaer and under Rangnick, was very much lacking and was very evident. Whereas now this is Man United that's starting to all their turning mains are starting to aim the same direction a little bit. The real question is now, are they going to be able to sustain that direction, or is this going to follow the same pattern of the last few times where it looks like they got the shit together under a new manager, and then it starts tapering off again? So that's the interesting question for me, because they've already been linked to Kane and Mount and Rice, and I know those are the players that are going to be the main storylines for the transfer window anyway. But they do have a sizable chance, Kane, don't you think?
Well, yeah, they do. I mean, they absolutely do. Should they go for him? Maybe, maybe. Um, Honestly, I've no idea how they prize Kane out from Daniel Levy. Unless they like bid stupid cash, for him. You know, ditto. Like I think if you believe the rumors and like most of the reports, 90% of them are 95% bullshit. I think Ten Hag's being given like 200 to 250 million quid to blow in the summer. Um, so I severely doubt he's going to spunk half of that on a centre forward when he's got Rashford scoring pretty much for fun. But they do need a striker. They do need a fucking. They do need somebody up front. They do need a fucking proper goal scorer. So maybe they will. I mean, I think somebody pointed out that Wout Weghorst is actually the least scoring Wout in the entire league.
They're actually it was Richard Jolly who comes out with something.
I didn't know who it was, but
he's outscored by Wout Faes twice.
Yeah, Wout Faes in both own goals and normal goals.
Yes.
So yes,
yeah.
That's quite tragic.
But yeah, and like I said, that's a curious. It's like Man United have been a really curious case this season because they could stand at winning two trophies this season, but also have been at the mercy of a 7-0 mauling at Anfield. It's such a very odd season for them, and they started off really poorly too. Like they were bottom of the league for the first 2 or 3 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. Until really you probably say Casemiro kind of got their. Casemiro and Lisandro finding their feet, kind of reestablished the spine of the team, and then just Rashford went on a superb run of form. But like I said, it's interesting to me if they can actually keep this going, or have perhaps like Newcastle capitalized on the likes of Chelsea and Liverpool having particularly bad seasons. That's the kind of the real question, I suppose. Whether that normalizes next season, yet to be seen. But I suppose with Newcastle on the opposite side, they've also been one of the teams that have benefited from just having a really fantastic manager, with coaching a great bunch of players, but also very deft recruitment. And as I said, they do have riches to spend, but they have spent them. They spent it smartly and they spent it well. Like the Gamares, Isaac coming in. Anthony Gordon was a bit of a flight of fantasy, in fairness, but you have to spend money in some level of shops every now and then. That's an impulse buy at best. But really, like Newcastle's kind of biggest reward here has been their defense. Like they're the best. They ended as the best defense in the league, which is saying a lot, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I think you point that also down to like the wonderful fucking play from Trippier. Botman has been
Tremendous.
brilliant
Yeah.
well back, and so yeah, like it's been great for Newcastle, and yeah, they really have capitalized on Liverpool and in particular Chelsea completely shitting the bed, and Spurs as well. Spurs turning into a complete basket case. And also everybody else, they're not really like they just maintain consistency. And that's what Howe was just like he was aiming for, really, was just getting the team to a point where he could just like plug in the same 12 to 15 players and just go, I know what I'm going to get here. Win, lose, or draw. I know I'm going to get more wins and draws than losses, but I know what I'm going to get. And, consistency gets you so much in this, gets you huge amounts in this league. So yeah, like it'll be interesting to see what they do now. They have funds to spend, but they don't really have the prestige anymore that they used to have, really. But also they've got a lot of brilliant players already. Like they've already got Gourmarage and Isaac. I think is fantastic. Isaac is such a fantastic player. He didn't really show what he can do, but he didn't show what he can do consistently over the season due to injuries. But like some of the goals he's been scoring have been like fucking incredible. It's like, oh
Yeah, we should
yes.
point it out, by the way, that like Newcastle didn't really have their best 11 until the last like 2 months of the season, really. They've been doing without the likes of Isaac and Wilson for quite some time. And they've been managing to get them results out of it. Again, perhaps because of their really strong defense, they weren't losing that many games.
Yeah, exactly. It's just how it just came in and went, right, we're just not gonna lose games.
Yeah.
That's the thing,
And you know what? It worked.
It really, yeah, it did. It actually really, really did. Um, so yeah, fucking fair play. You know, that's what happens when you get a manager who actually knows what the fuck he's doing and actually back him.
Yeah.
Who the fuck?
It's a mystery to us all, like, but I always find that like this a lot of been made about the kind of I suppose the parallels to when Man City were ramping up and starting to sign those decadent players, and Newcastle will perhaps learning that precedence, trying to do something similar. Now that like they have, you probably argue that they are probably a year or two ahead of schedule in terms of being a Champions League team. Again, whether that's sustainable or not was remain to be seen next season. But surely they now have the kind of the green light to go a little bit decadent in the summer. As you said, they don't have the prestige that they used to. But instead of signing a high marquee player, they can sign blue chip players instead, like they have been doing with the likes of Gamaras and Isaac. Like that's certainly on the cards for them, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But as I said, they're in the Champions League playoffs, but they're often just procession football matches. Like they'll be paired against some fucking no-name team that should be able to blitz out with their B team.
Hmm.
But yeah, like it's been some yeah, they might do. I'm like, again, it's all about building squad depth. How will now go right. It's we need the team to compete twice a week, every single week
Hmm.
for the entire league.
I can
And they
actually
don't
clarify,
have
confirm there, by the way, that Newcastle actually go straight into the group stages. They don't have to do the playoff anymore.
what the fourth.
Yeah, this because the seedings have changed in terms of
Oh yeah,
you
they've
know
changed everything now. Fuck yeah.
I think as far as I know now, so the playoff round, I'm actually just looking at the Wikipedia of this. So Newcastle will be kind of like pot four anyway, just based off prestige alone. But basically the top teams get their boys in immediately into the group stages. So there's actually less to go for the smaller countries. So like Belgium and Switzerland, Greece, Czechia, they all have to basically fight in the playoffs with them. But their competitions are the Europa League, and then further down is the Conference League. So that's how it's all shuffled down. So like Celtic, for example, are automatically into the group stages. I think it has some. Oh, do you know what as well? It's with Russia's expulsion from the Champions League as well. There's more spaces available now. So
Right.
the beneficiaries of them have been like Ukraine, obviously, Scotland, and Austria. So since the coefficients have changed, they're basically given the spots to the big leagues automatically. So again, case in point, Union Berlin are now in the Champions League, and so is Lyon from League On. Whereas Newcastle now are getting a bit of beneficiary that they're automatically in. So the Champions League this coming year is weird to say the least.
Yeah.
But it's perhaps a good year for Newcastle to get in because they're going to be like, because there's so many obscure teams in there, they could actually be just pot three automatically, which is weird. But yeah, no, they're automatically in. Just sorry to cut across you there, but yeah.
No. That's all right. That's grand. You know. Yeah. So they're they spent 250 million quid since he came in, and they've spent it really, really, really fucking well. They got in Botman, as I already said, brilliant. He's been great. Dan Burn from Brighton, wonderful. I mean, fucking hell, two solid defenders there. Trippier, he's got basically a tailor-made, excellent flying wing back or full back as he's been played, and a tailor-made team captain to urge everybody on. And then he just needed to add a bit of his solid flair players in Gurmarish and Isaac. Pope, great. I've always rated him as a good keeper. They got him from Burnley for 10 million. And it's just been fantastic. Like, it's a really good recruitment.
They seem to be a team that could definitely capitalize from relegation fodder, couldn't they? Like they could poach one or two from Leicester and Southampton and potentially Leeds as well.
Yeah, I mean, like they're definitely one of the larger vultures circling those three. Now Southampton and fucking Leeds don't have too many players that are going to get taken off them. They've got like what 2 or 3 each. But Leicester are going to get picked clean. That's comfortably. I'm like, I look at that. I think somebody was pointing out on the podcast I was listening to the other day. That's easily the best team they've ever seen get relegated.
I'd agree with that. Actually, yeah. On paper, yeah, but yeah.
Paper, yeah, obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not judging them by performances.
No.
It's been fucking terrible. They've been absolute fucking cash. But yeah, I was looking at that. That's comfortably a top half of the Premier League table team. I was like, my God, they were playing like total arse.
Yeah.
And yeah, but they're going to get picked clean. Like, they're absolutely going to get fucking fleeced.
There's no doubt about that. So yeah, again, we'll probably touch on Leicester when we travel down the bottom league of the table, which has been particularly fucking mental this year. But we'll get to that. Crazy. So the Europa League, the Europa League teams are very much two very different sides of the coin, being Liverpool and Brighton. Considering that Liverpool obviously would not have wanted Europa League football at the start of the season, they would have rather be in the top two, challenging Man City again. But as very much in the first month of the season, it was very, very evident that Liverpool were not going to be able to do it. They were having wobbles, they were having poor results, poor performances. And not to say they had a bad preseason at all, but I think the key thing was that immediately they were losing options. Like in this one Far Asia tour they were doing, they had lost both Jota and Diaz. Now I think Diaz had been injured anyway, even just separate to that. But Jota went down, Firmino was going down, Thiago was going down, Oxlade-Chamberlain out for 3 months. And it was also that little bit of complacency on a recruitment standpoint, because this kind of season could easily have been prevented by Liverpool and by those in charge. I think a lot of it will be kind of made of like the departure of Michael Edwards, and did that kind of upset the apple cart, and did they lose their little bit of initiative from it. But in the end, whichever way it falls down, we still left the manager with 3 or 4 midfielders that were not fit for purpose at that point. And then on top of that, you banked on 2 midfield signings that you thought were absolutely going to happen in Tchouaméni and Bellingham. one, you got priced out of significantly, and now you look like you're losing to Real. And the second one, you got priced out of immediately, and you're now going to lose them to Real. So there's a pattern developing here.
Stop bidding
Um,
on players that Real Madrid really liked.
well, you see, this is the thing. They were following a playbook that had worked for them before this, which was to narrow down, to use their data, use their real life scouting, and narrow it down to one player. And that had worked to recruit Salah, Mane, Wijnaldum, everyone else in between there. In that generation of players that Klopp had signed, the proverbial Klopp team were all signed during using that model. But the difference is that, and again, perhaps Darwin Núñez is perhaps the canary in the minefield, in the mine shaft here, is that sometimes the data can be a bit disillusionary. Sometimes the real life thing doesn't quite work out. And then sometimes it just takes time. And when you're up against a juggernaut like Manchester City, you unfortunately don't really have time. You don't have the ability to have a fallow season like this, where you have things go wrong and you can just reset and go again. You lose Champions League money. You lose the initiative, because players at Liverpool would have liked to sign this season are now probably going to want to go to Man United, or want to go to Newcastle, or again further afield. So Europa League is not that attractive a prospect anymore. So,
but Liverpool have prestige that Newcastle don't have.
Very true. Yeah.
Plus, you've got Klopp. Everybody knows and quite likes the guy, and plus, everybody like Liverpool. I think everybody, even people looking from the outside in, like people who aren't in the Premier League and watching in, I think everybody kind of knows that this is a blip for Liverpool. Now,
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, when you look at what Liverpool have done in the past and what they've won, which is almost everything in the last 4 years, this is a blip. I think conceivably an agent or one of the club representatives going to an agent saying, look, this is a blip. Play Europa League, win it. We're back in. We're pot one in the Champions League, so it doesn't fucking matter what we do in the league or any of that type of shit. Or something along those lines. And I think people will buy that. Obviously they're going to use it to slightly leverage higher pay, but fuck it,
whatever works. Yeah, exactly.
Whatever works. But the recruitment just needs to be better. No more Arthurs.
That was a stopgap at best, and like Klopp himself personally doesn't like stopgaps, and you could tell that because he never fucking played them.
Yeah,
but then again, he was never fucking fit. So like when you're coming into to the team already unfit and not able to play, Klopp doesn't go, don't, goodbye, see you later. And that was the same with Ben Davies last time. He was a stopgap because there literally was no centre backs left. Yeah. And it's just like the best you can do is a cheap and cheerful centre back who happens to be good on the ball. And he just wasn't a factor. I mean, again, we went back to Nat Phillips, who was not necessarily a ball playing defender, as opposed to a hit it until it's dead defender, which has its function. I think you can agree. But I think, as I said, like the blip thing is certainly one interpretation of the season, but it's also another interpretation is that it has been kind of coming.
There was a gross misunderestimation of how. Gross underestimation of how grueling a 63 game season is on the team.
Well, it's that number like 3 times over when you think about it, because 2 years before this, we had the season where we were competing on literally every competition, which was the Super Cup. Again, I know it's a one-off game, but it does throw off the preseason stride a bit. The Community Shield, same difference. But the Club World Cup, going to Saudi Arabia during the Christmas break, as it were, having that competition, then coming back and having to catch up, then trying to sustain the Champions League challenge, which again ended early that season. So again, you're looking at 60 games that season. Then you had the season after that, which was the domestic double and Champions League final, and that's a 63 game season as well. So those 2 seasons on top of each other, and the one before that was the season where we won the Premier League during COVID. Or I'm getting maybe my years mixed up. Anyway, the actual rhythm of the team have been thrown off over 3 years of heavily sustained football, playing a style that is very high on physical demand. So this was inevitable. This was going to happen. And the worst thing was, this was also the season that happened to have a mid-season World Cup. So it was even more crystallized. It was like the perfect storm that anything could go wrong. If anything, really, it actually says a lot about how good Jurgen Klopp and his coaching crew are, that they were managed to get a fifth place finish out of this season. I think it's incredible that you managed to get that far.
Yeah, I think Salah said something along the lines when he was basically just roasting the season. It just went, you know, we had a terrible season and still finished fifth. Imagine if we were our normal selves or something like that. And I was like,
Exactly.
all right, I was like, all right, then fine, yeah, but you know, this needs to be addressed. So
Hmm.
while it can be sold off as a blip, and you know, arguably that is true, this could develop into a slide if it's not addressed.
Very
You
much
have
so,
to,
yeah.
from a quick glance, you at the very, very least need three senior midfielders and a defender, a mobile ball playing defender.
I think you could make the argument that Liverpool needs 7 players next season. You really, really could.
Yeah, but like
Yeah.
I was trying to temper mine with a bit of realism
No,
here.
but that's what I'm saying. That's the maximum that Liverpool need
You
because
are you're not buying seven fucking players.
no, we're not.
You
No,
might
no,
buy
no.
th-
We
you
don't.
might
We
buy
don't
you,
have seasons like that.
you
No,
could buy
but like,
you could buy two or three, maybe four, but you're not getting seven.
no, 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 absolutely
But
not. But I'm looking from the top down because like realistically, we have to let Kelleher go this season. He needs first team football. He's at that age, and there's genuinely good teams who want him to be their first choice play the keeper, being Brighton, Brentford, Spurs. Any one of those three are good. Probably not Spurs, but Brentford, Brighton, brilliant teams for them, brilliant for his development. Right? We're losing Milner, we're losing Oxlade-Chamberlain, we're losing Keita. Those three need to be replaced.
Firmino,
Bajcetic is going to be one of those replacements. Elliot seems to be converting to the church of the number 8, so he would probably be an option there. Although I think his future is still out wide right as Salah's deputy. So realistically, we're looking at 2 more midfielders there. There are options. I would also look to get a competition for Fabinho because he is also the reason for a lot of our struggles this season. A lot of them made about Trent in particular, and I'll get to him in a minute. But Fabinho has been our second worst player by a country mile over the season. And it's only because of the tactical changes toward the end that have actually made both of those players more comfortable, more stable. Um, we're also need to start looking at centre backs because Gomez and Matip have lost what they had. And Matip has definitely lost his pace. Gomez, I think he's just stalled a little bit in his progression, so he might need to get moved on. If there's a good offer for Gomez, I'd say take it personally. And Van Dijk definitely needs someone more mobile alongside him. When Kanate is back in the side, Van Dijk is a lot more comfortable being the kind of the proverbial Vidic to the Ferdinand, if that kind of makes sense, and vice versa. Um, so you're definitely there's definitely options on the market as well because I think we're looking at Evan Ndika from Frankfurt, who's out of contract, 24, built like a brick shit house, and already has played with Kanati at international level. So he would be an ideal person to slot in there. And then you have, of course, what happens up front. It looks like McAllister's coming in to be the Firmino replacement, so that's a front 6 pretty much settled in. And then it's a question of can we get someone like Mason Mount in? That's looking possible, but he seems to favour Man United. I'd say that's going to be a bit more that might rumble on. I can't see Mount being a United player. I don't think he suits the mold. But my goodness, is he ever a Jurgen Klopp player?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
he is a Jurgen Klopp born player. So he would definitely be. He's going to be courted to high end because Bellingham's gone. Bellingham's not going to happen unless we spend big money for him. But this is a season where we can't afford just one player. We need 3. We need options in that midfield and variety as well. Like we're not going to replace Milner. We're not going to replace Wijnaldum. We need different players in those roles.
Yeah. Here's the thing, right? Isn't it just to play a wee bit of a devil's advocate to you, or
Please
to
do.
maybe give an alternate thing? Is it the case that the owners and Klopp have been guilty of poor maintenance of their midfield, which is why you need 3 fucking midfielders going into a fucking,
Oh, 100% yes.
you know?
Like bear in mind, the 3 players that have let us down every season for the last while have been Oxlade-Chamberlain, Keita, and perhaps if you want to be a bit cruel about it, Curtis Jones. Now, I'm being cruel about Jones because like his injury was something he needed to get dealt with anyway. It was a hip problem. He needed to get that done one way or another. And since he came back into the squad, look how good the team have been.
He's
He has
kicked on.
fitted
He's really kicked on, yeah.
fucking brilliant. And every when even at under 21 level, I think Lee Carsley had the kind of the quote was quoted in saying, just give yourself the ball and play. That's all
Yeah.
the Curtis Jones needs to do. And a lot was made when the when Eddie Boothroyd's under 21 team crashed out of the Euros. The biggest bugbear was that he never played Curtis Jones.
Yeah.
He's a criminally underrated player, even by Liverpool fans, who are at best times cretins when it comes to player squad build up, because they don't get some of the finer points of it. They just see big names. So definitely there's been that level of complacency has to go.
Yeah,
And
just to follow on from my kind of point there, is
yeah.
that I remember like about a year and a half ago we were discussing you were tying loads of your midfielders down to long-term contracts, future-proofing squad. And that was like a year and a half ago. And
Yeah.
now you've got players leaving for nothing. You're looking very badly exposed. A wee bit desperate if I want to be a bit
Yeah,
mean
very
about it.
true.
I mean, yes, there have been injuries, but you know, what teams don't. Um, but you pointed out Fabinho has been like you're a fucking chronically underperforming player. He's terrible. He's got years to run on his contract. He's already washed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, is it a case of that? Like, it has been coming, but isn't it more of like, no, this is your making. This is your fault. It's not like,
Yeah.
oh well, this has been on the horizon. No, it's like, no, this is you doing your job not that well. Like,
Yeah, exactly. It is exactly that. Like it's again the critical mistake that Tita made in the last 2 seasons was banking on getting someone like Chelmeny or Bellingham, and Chelmeny would have been the competition Fabinho needed to keep his performance levels up, and Bellingham would have been the competition that fucking anybody needed to keep up. But like I said, you're trying to pick like the number one best out of everyone else. And again, for certain seasons, we were able to pick number one. But the difference was that nobody knew who the number one was at that point. No one knew that Luis Diaz was going to be the best dribbler in the league outside of Valencia Maximin. No one knows that Diego Jota was the best goals and assists head in the Wolves team. They were all looking at Adama Traore. They were looking at Raul Jimenez. No one picked Jota. So the difference is now people have got smarter with their analytics and are looking at different alternatives. That's why this in January, it was huge that we had to pick Gakpo off United, because if we had not got Gakpo in January, the actual renaissance we had there towards the end of the season would not have happened,
yeah, he's
because
starting to really come good. He's
he is
starting to look
tremendous.
he's starting to look the business. Yeah.
Yeah. Now the difference is again, it's the same kind of critical problem that Liverpool. I think certain players Liverpool have got comfortable because you have no direct competition. And Trent is comfortable at right back because Calvin Ramsey has been perpetually injured. So I think you could make an argument that someone needs to come in at right back. And again, that also might solve the midfield problem if Trent is now a competitor for Fabinho, or if they come back to this kind of 3-box-3 midfield in possession that they've been doing at the end of the season. If you have someone like, again, I'm spitballing here, Kyle Walker-Peters, let's say they poach him for Southampton at dirt cheap. He is a out and out right back, similar type of crossing ability, similar type of wing back skill, and he just fills a role tactically. Brings strength into the midfield, and that solves your midfield problem a little bit. You do need more names in there. But again, if Bacedic is in the first team and Jones is back on form, that's 2 slots filled immediately. So the actual need for buying midfielders in bulk is not as necessary if you be a bit smarter with how you do your squad. And then it's a question of like, do we need a backup goalkeeper now if Kelleher has to go? And who's the replacement for Firmino? So there are huge questions this season. But as much as anything else with Europa League, it's kind of seen as a bit of an anchor having to play Thursdays and Sundays. But at the same time, this is an opportunity because, like again, there's tons of young players we could come in now and buy them under the radar, and bleed them in using the Europa League. Again, the Europa League, I think, will be a tremendous playground for Darwin Núñez next season, because I don't see him starting every game come to the new season. He is going to be fourth or fifth choice coming this season, and this will be the time where he starts bullying players off the ball and scoring goals and getting that confidence back up again. Likewise, if Carvalho stays, I don't know what's happened to him. Something's happened behind the scenes between him and Klopp, but again, that's an opportunity for him to get back into the good book if he's playing week in, week out.
Yeah, haven't Liverpool rejected an offer? Didn't they reject it?
Yeah, for a permanent deal. So he's like,
Yeah.
they want basically Liverpool are either going to keep him or they're going to send him out on loan. They're
Yeah.
not selling him outright
No.
because again, you'd be crazy to sell someone that young, for the price you got for him. So again, these are chances now for players like in that kind of category, you like to your Cavallios and Elliots, to get good game time, proper game time. Look, just again, the best example is look at how United have done it. Like they have, if they weren't in the Europa League now, like they the group stages were mostly thanks to Garnacho and Elanga and a few of the other players, blue chip players that they know they have, and they were able to give them minutes. And then suddenly towards the end of the season, Garnacho scoring match winners and are like small, like important parts of the team. So this can be done by Liverpool. And also, again, speaking as an Irishman, imagine Dublin City if Liverpool got to the fucking Europa League final. Could you fucking imagine it? We would be drowned in red. It's like someone just like poured fucking jam all over the city centre. Like that's so lucrative to me. Is like actually having the Aviva packed out like a fucking mini Anfield. And again, we've had friendlies in the Aviva before where Liverpool have been in, and it has become Anfield overnight. Like so, this is very very like possible. But that's also down to the team. Can they actually get that far? And again, Klopp is one of the best at these kind of formats. So he should, if the team care about this, they will get to the final and win it. But it's down to how they do next season. Are they in a shout with the Premier League? Do they need to prioritize? All these questions and more next season. So anyway, let's move down the totem pole again a bit to Brighton, who are equally in the Europa League this season. Brilliant season.
Brilliant.
They have been so fucking good.
Just think, Jesus Christ, we could do an entire podcast on just Brighton alone.
Yeah.
Fucking wonderful. I just, it is incredible. I didn't think De Zerbi was this fucking good a coach. He's even got like Pep Guardiola saying like he's just the best coach he's ever fucking seen for 20 years. This is incredible.
And you can see that, like I think he was poached from Shakhtar, Sassuolo. He was there for a while, and they suddenly started becoming a European contender. And it's just like this is his kind of wheelhouse. This is what he does. But look at the players he's brought in. Like this,
the luckiest fuckers in the world. This is brilliant. Europe, this is the first time ever.
First time ever. Yeah. And the beautiful thing is that validates them keeping a lot of those players in situ. Like they don't
fucking
need
great football. Owned by a lifelong fan. It's wonderful. It's a fairy tale. Fucking brilliant. It's just been excellent. Like they've brought in a load of great new players, and they've also managed to get the old stalwart players playing out their skin. So like it's a good one to see the vets like March and Dunk stepping up to the plate.
March in particular was like his best return.
He's been brilliant. Like I was like, who the fuck is this? This is the other Solly March that like somebody just slapped a different label on, and just this guy's fucking brilliant. This is the Solly March we've seen before. And that's the thing, like every single setback has actually seemed to just improve them. It's incredible. Fucking Tad Bowley comes in and poaches not only their coach, but their star left back, most of the fucking backroom staff, they just get in better ones.
Getting better ones.
You know?
It's like they're the Yu-Gi-Oh trap card. It's like haha.
That's it. You have activated my pot of greed. Boom. I know it's not a trap card, but like it's like fuck you, you greedy son of a bitch. We're gonna take your money and do better. It's incredible. Like Incisio has been fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
They're just been fucking excellent. They really have been. I like to point out any one player seems a bit churlish. Actually, I am going to point out one player. I'm going to point out the most talented Irishman in the league right now, which is Evan Ferguson.
Yeah.
Big Ev.
A very Haaland type striker, which is just music to our fucking ears, isn't it? Like
it's fucking brilliant. Ireland have needed it. This is going to go right. We've gone full green on this one. We're not even going to really talk. Sorry, Brighton fans, if any are listening. We're just going to wax lyrical about our own here. I'm loving the development of Evan Ferguson. He's signed a brand new extended contract with them. He's really young and he's being brought on. He's fucking excellent. He's got great. He's working on it. His finishing is brilliant and it's getting better. He's 6'2". He's built like a brick shit house. I'm loving it. I'm really fucking liking what I'm seeing there with him. And De Zerbi is in love with him. All the private, and they're just bringing him on like just baby steps and just like, look, we just need to make sure you get better. And he's getting better. And I'm loving it. I'm fucking loving it.
100%.
With fucking pains.
And for every Ferguson though, like Ferguson is just one piece of that puzzle as well. You've got Mitoma coming in from
Oh,
like
Thomas so good. Oh my god, he's an absurd player. He's just an
like
absurd cheat
Mitoma,
code fucking player.
Caicedo, Enciso, fucking Estupinian,
Oh, that's
um, again, this is a Brighton team that can afford to have Jason Steele in goal because the Serbi thinks Sanchez could be a bit better on the ball. Like
yeah.
this is lunacy. Like this should not be like a group of these kind of like obscure players coming together does not work unless you're in Football Manager. This is exactly what you would wish for your your blue chip teams. And then what's also kind of like and again to kind of skip a few kind of people in the league as it were. This has been a real year of blue chip teams for me because I think we did a feature during the season about the death of the proverbial Premier League mid-table, seeing the usual kind of suspects collapse like those Wolves, West Ham, Leicester, and Southampton and Everton. Like those teams were in a relegation battle this year, and what we had in replacement was Brighton, Villa, Fulham, Brentford, all teams that follow a very similar role, and that is to find the players that no one else has copped and bring in a coach that is criminally underrated. So you got Brighton with the Zerbi, who again, the top six teams are doing audits of themselves, going, why didn't we get him? How do we miss this guy? Same with Aston Villa. Aston Villa replaced Steven Gerrard, who was a famous egotist, with Unai Emery. And now they're in the Europa Conference League. So congratulations, Aston Villa, for winning the Europa Conference League next season. Uh, but like I said, but Aston Villa, like if you look at their squad, they should have been seventh place. Like if you do, like pound for pound, take Philip Coutinho out of it. That is a team that should be top 10 anyway. And now they have a coach that is actually reflecting how they should be performing. And like he's made Ollie Watkins into a phenomenon in front of goal. But not only that, he's fixed the Aston Villa midfield that Steven Gerrard kind of broke. And even before then, he's got two juggernauts in defense in Konza and Mings. They're unbreakable since he came in. And if all else fails, Emi Martinez in goal, who just happened to win the World Cup a couple of months ago. Like, this is a formidable team. We already talked about Brentford over the season. They're a tremendous outfit as well, and probably hard done by to be ninth. Ivan Toney, with obviously his off-field shenanigans, if you want to call it that, like was one mere kind of like plot thread in that season. You had players stepping up like Visa and Embuemo and later on the likes of Damsgaard coming in. Like Damsgaard was the toast of the Euros, and he comes in under the radar at Brentford. You got Fulham, who on the surface is Mitrovic and friends, but they completely upset everybody and like show that they actually are worthy for the Premier League and not just a kind of a proverbial topsy turvy team. They have actually they've actually got their shit together for a change, which says a lot. And look at the teams that they kind of surpassed: Spurs, Chelsea. Like these teams did not have their stuff together this season, and they've been punished quite simply.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that you start talking off about went from Brighton to Villa because Villa are one of the few teams that have beaten Brighton twice.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, just Villa, just excellent. You know, they're really good, and it is all down to just a superb. This is what a superb manager can do to a team. You don't just get them in. Brighton lost Potter, who's a good manager, by the way.
Yes.
But they got into Zerbi, who's just exceptional. Who what Brighton fan would trade back? Fucking none of them. You know, absolutely none of them. Ditto with Villa. They got in Unai Emery, an actual proper manager. Cause why? Because the guy they had in beforehand was a fucking clown. You know, and that is it. And he just went in and he's like got the players playing their game. Play your game. That was it. And because he
Yeah.
knew he had some outstanding players, he had guys like Matty Cash. He just knew, he just knew that these guys were great. Exactly. Like you don't need to tell Emi Martinez how to play football. He knows what he's doing. Just let him play. Just make it brilliant for him to play. Similar with guys like John McGinn that he's brought along. Again, the vets stepping up to the plate, playing out of the skins. These are fucking brilliant. I love this. This has been excellent. Now they're in the Conference League, and they're probably going to win it. Let's face it.
Yeah, I'm just seeing like their kind of current as where teams confirmed to be in it are actually just Bayer Leverkusen at the minute, and like of Alkmaar, Dynamo Kiev. I mean the juggernaut that is Aberdeen. But no, I think like so like they are like depending on how the drip tray ends up as well. Like they're already in good stead there. Like they can still be a comfortable contender there. Um, but like I said, like it is that kind of resurgence. And again, as I mentioned, being consumed by these new blue chip teams have been like the Spurs and Chelsea. So I suppose we gotta talk about them first. So Spurs, like we had like again our preseason predictions had kind of earmarked this to be the season that Conte would do well at Spurs before he got sick and tired. And it just happened in fast forward, really. Like this should have been the season where like, and I had kind of like interpreted the way they had done because they had done good business, really. And they had got the players that they technically needed to give Conte the keys to the kingdom and challenge for the league title. And I would have thought, like, listen, they maybe at some stage it would have been in the conversation, but they would have dropped off because this is Spurs. And I would have thought they would have got as far as third. And the rest of you guys reckon it was for me fourth. It just didn't happen. And like half of it is kind of Conte's doing, really, wasn't it? He just didn't use the players he was bought.
Well, no, but I mean, like, Conte's a world class coach, but like Conte plays his football. He buys in his players and imposes his style. He doesn't really conform to the team. He makes the team conform to him. And
Yeah.
Levi gave him not a whole lot. Now, gave him more, as has been correctly, by the way, pointed out. He was given more than Levi gave most of the previous managers. But still, like, he wasn't given enough to do what he wants to do. And if you're not going to do that, then Conte is the wrong person to hire. But like, this has just been a season of low points for Spurs, and it's been hilarious.
Yeah.
You've got the two managers. They still haven't gotten a replacement.
They are seriously drifting, aren't they? Like they've already kind of lost.
This is being recorded on the 29th of May, and they've no idea who their next manager is. That
because
is
everyone's turned them down.
That is unbelievable. Like, that is crazy. They've a managing director of football that's been banned from football. They lost both times to Arsenal. It's just the endless thrashings. That if just they crashed out of the FA Cup to fucking Sheffield United. It was just fucking hilarious. Like, all it is. And then, of course, the absolute pounding they got from Newcastle when they were 5-0 down inside after about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, the Foley fuck. Like, they're drifting, and it's going to get worse.
Like, if I'm even looking at the names that have been like very much heavily linked to the Spurs, the Spurs job. Like, it starts off with Tuchel. Tuchel obviously got no, man. I'm going to Munich. Thanks. See you later. Then you have Nagelsmann, who obviously he replaced and just not even considering, not even like picking up the phone. Then he started trying to be pull fast with and going like, okay, how about the names that people have known, like Xabi Alonso? And he goes, no, I'm good. I'm saying Leverkusen. I don't want any of that. Then you got further afield. We got Arne Slot, who won the league with Feyenoord this week. Nope, not interested. I'm happy to stay in the Eredivisie. So if someone is willing to stay in a developmental league, let's be delicate about this, and get that kind of like the cheap and cheerful Champions League football ahead of what Spurs being a more lucrative project, that says a lot about what's happening there. And now only today you've had the Celtic boss Ange Postecoglou basically just go, fuck off, I'm not leaving. like it is like everyone, like, they're trying to kind of call are not picking up the phone. To the extent of like, who can they call on next? Like, they'd have to poach someone like, is this like where they have to start going for like seeing like taking risks on the likes of Brendan Rodgers, who, let's be face it, relegated Leicester this season? Did he go for Ralph Hasenhüttl, same purpose, or did he have to take even further risks and just going for someone completely unknown? Like, this is the scary part for them. Like, they're running out of options.
Yeah, but they're running out of options. But like, the thing is, none of their options were particularly good to begin with.
No.
Like, when you look at Nagelsmann, like, what would he have done with this? I mean, like, people will point to like on paper they have a decent squad. They've got the likes of obviously they got Kane, they've got Son Heung-min, they got Kulusevski, Richarlison, who barely got played this season for some weird
I have
fucking
thoughts
reason.
on him.
Yeah, Bentancur. Sorry, my knowledge of Spurs players is predictably.
But Højbjerg was probably their best player this season,
Hoyle,
and Romero perhaps.
Kane was easily the best season. He scored 43% of their goals.
Fair, yeah, absolutely. But I would argue that's by design. That was not naturally when everything is going through him as a focal point, he has to score all those goals anyway. So
Yeah, but
I don't want to get
yeah, but he still has to do it. Like
fair,
I'm like
fair.
United funnel quite a bit of their action through Wout Weghorst, and he doesn't slot fuck all home.
Yeah, well,
Like you still have to put the shit. You still have to put the shit away. Like, but anyways,
true.
I just it's impossible to say what's going to happen with Spurs without knowing who the next manager is, and the fact that we can't say that, given that the season is over, is incredible. The longer that goes on, the more I'm like, surely even the Gimps at Enoch and Levi realize that the longer they've no manager, the longer that they've no MD, the worst, the absolute worst. Like that's a fucking slippery slope, and they're done.
Yeah, and like I said, like they have lost so much ground on those teams ahead of them. Like I couldn't consider Spurs a Big Six team anymore, really. And I think a lot of it is going to go down to when, and I do believe this now at this stage, when they do lose Kane, they're not going to replace him. They're just not going to find an adequate replacement. So, like, what does that team look like now that they're essentially their cash cow is gone and the club captain is gone, and the person, as you said, who scored 42% of their goals, where are those goals going to come from? Because Kulusevski is possibly going back to Juve, so he's not guaranteed to stay either. Bentancur has to stay; the obligation to buy is there. But then you're looking at, well, Mora's got leaving the club. So out of that kind of quartet that they've built their season on, Son is the only one left. And again, no European football for a player who absolutely deserves it. Like, he could move on too. It's not outside the realms of possibility either.
Well, maybe he could move on, but he won't because he had an absolutely fucking atrocious season. I mean,
By his high standards, yes.
His play, no, not by his high standards, by any standards. His play was garbage this season. He was absolute garbage. But yeah, like it's just like, and also who would sign into this poorly organized shit show? I mean, they've always known that Conte was leaving. I'm like, we knew at the beginning. We're like, oh, this is Conte's final little swan song season. He's going to send them out in a high. So we knew that Conte was always leaving. Why didn't they sign anybody else? I mean,
exactly.
Brighton got the Zerbian. I'm like, we always pointed out, Brighton got the Zerbian pretty much the instant that Potter was out the door. I don't even think the fucking office seat was fucking cooled down. It was still warm from Potter sitting in it before the Zerbi was straight in there. And, and they had a plan. Why have Spurs have had 6 months to plan for fucking Conte leaving, and they just had no plan. They just said, like, damn, fuck it, we'll just get somebody in. And then there's no plan. And then the guy whose job it is to come up with the plan, the director of football, he's now banned from football. So it's like, not only did he not have a plan, but they've nobody to even formulate a plan. This is incredible. Like, this is fucking Wile E. Coyote levels of fucking.
It is tremendous. Yeah.
When it not for Chelsea, like they would be the worst run team so far this season.
Well, you mentioned them. Let's get stuck into Chelsea. I mean, they're a team that's like at the start of this coming season, and I'll have to check this to confirm, but at the start of this coming season, they're going to have 37 first team players. Which is absolute lunacy. And again, out of all the possible permutations of whatever was going to happen with the new ownership, I do not think Chelsea fans could even believe this was possible. And this is like we've I won't say that there's been precedents for this or whatever it is, but this is unprecedented. Like Chelsea have had follow seasons before. Like the famous meltdown season of Mourinho, where they finished in 10th or 11th, I want to say, in the end.
Yeah.
And and then they end up kind of coming back and resurging. And again, a lot of it was dependent on like Hazard having a good season or bad season, and he was like he would flip flop on that sense. But this is a situation where, and again, I'm actually just doing a head count right now because there are players out on loan. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you've got 4 goalkeepers, right? You have 3, 4, 14 defenders, and 11 midfielders, and 11 strikers in a team in a game where you can only play at best 3 of each, like broadly speaking. That is absolutely crazy. There's no other way to call it.
Didn't they have to extend the dressing room?
They actually had to have 2 there. Like the way at one point in the season, some of the players had to get changed in the corridor because there wasn't space in the dressing room. But it's insane.
During the tape sessions, there are players sitting on the ground because there's no seats.
Yeah,
like it's.
And again, like it's not as if there's players out of contract. I think, as far as I know, the likes of even Aspilicueta has a deal until next season. Actually, there we go. The only 3 people who are out of contract this season are Bettinelli, one of the goalkeepers, who likely will be kept because he's a homegrown player. Thiago Silva, who I think has already signed on to an extension or has an option for an extension, and N'Golo Kante, who will probably leave. So out of those, you're probably saying Kante's the only one that's leaving there. Because Silva won't leave. Thiago probably will stay on. And Bettinelli kind of needs to stay on for the homegrown percentage. So there's a lot of players that are contracted until 2031. So they're kind of stuck where they are with the fees. But let's try and even at least try to break this down a bit. So it starts off obviously with Thomas Tuchel in charge, and the key kind of story coming out of Chelsea at the start was that they didn't necessarily have a director of football in play. It was pretty much Tuchel who was recruiting the players, or so goes the reports. Then we get to a stage where obviously they had the spat with Conte, and clearly there was something going on in the background with Tuchel that was clashing with Bowley or with the team generally because they were starting to struggle. But this is also a Chelsea team that have to venture with a front 3 containing a very poor Aubameyang, a declining Sterling, and Kai Havertz, who just playing with number 10 for God's sake, because that's his natural role. And either way, he's always played out of position. You got players constantly injured for some whatever reason. Again, for sometimes you might have lads like Broya who wreck their ankles, or you have players who just are not fit and just won't train at all. So it's even that alone is a rough start. And then they bring in Graham Potter, who is now not only have you spurged enough so much money to make it a Tuchel team, you get rid of Tuchel before he even has a chance to mold these players. Then comes in Potter and his backroom staff, and they recruit even more players. On top of that, the likes of your Mudryks and Enzo Fernandez and all these other players. And they don't even give it a chance to settle in either, because then he's gone for Frank Lampard, who statistically has to be one of the worst managers in the Premier League history. I'm thinking, what did fucking Steve Bruce even have these bad numbers? It's insane. And every team he plays is nonsensical. It's flooded with midfielders because
I think one of the comments I saw about Frank Lampard's interim at Chelsea was that he was hired solely to put players in the shop window.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, I was because and the reasoning for that was that's literally the only way any of the teams he was fielding made any sense, is if he was literally trying to go, hey, everybody, look at these players. Don't he run well? Don't he play well? I know the rest of the team, I know altogether it's pretty shit, but you like the cut of his jib. Give us a call. That's the kind of thing that's the reason why he wasn't fussed about losing constantly or picking the fucking maddest chimera of a team you've ever seen. It's because he was just trying to get these players into the shop window so he can just get fucking rid of them.
The sheer fact that like we started this month and it was still mathematically possible for Chelsea to get relegated is such an insane sentence to say, even in this grand old age where like in foot like with this season in particular, anything could have happened, and it did happen to certain teams. Like that was not that was not mathematically like locked in until match day 34 or whatever it was when they beat Bournemouth. Um, but the sheer the fact that it was going off the rails so quickly and so comically is something that like I can't like if I was a Chelsea fan I couldn't put into words, so I don't know how they feel
Yeah,
about it.
it was the scale of the implosion that actually really
Yeah.
fucking shocked me. I'm like, everything seemed to just be done wrong,
Mm.
from hiring players seemingly scattershot at random, like throwing darts at the board, to replacing the entire structure of the club, from everything from the ballroom down to the medical teams. Um, Sacking so many managers, sacking Tuchel so early was fucking stupid.
Mm.
Hiring in a project manager, not letting him do the project.
Nope.
Um, I was sitting on, and then rehiring Frank Lampard. I'm like, I was going, what on earth? Like, you're just going from bad to worse here. This is terrible.
Mm.
Um, I just fucking just, it's terrible. Like, it's hilariously terrible.
Yeah. So in the end, they have like on today as we recorded, they've announced that Pochettino will be the new Chelsea manager, and like genuinely, his first job is just like selling half of his team. Because bear in mind, they finished 12th. There's absolutely no champions European football at all at that level of the league. Nothing.
No,
So they're facing a reset season, and with a
yeah,
team
well,
that
they've
isn't
just
there.
got a one game a week bar cup competitions.
Mm,
Um, to be honest with you, I think because he's confirmed as the head coach, so I don't even think it's down to him to sell the players. Or if I were him, how I would be going in is I would be turning around to the hierarchy and going, it's not my responsibility to sell the players. I'm not picking. I will take my preseason and then I will pare down this ridiculous blancmange of a fucking squad that you've
mm,
assembled here. I'm going to pick 24 players, maybe 25, maybe. Actually, probably be a bit less given that they've no European football. You just pointed out there. So maybe 23. Let's say 23, right?
yeah.
I'm going to pick 23 players out of the 37, did you say?
Well, if I'm doing the math again, so 4, 14, so that's like 18. Oh, Jesus, it's worse. It's 39. It's a
Right.
team of 40, I think, actually. Holy shit.
Right. Let's go with 39 because that's hilarious.
Okay.
Because I'm going to pick 23 players out of this 39, and the remaining 16 are you to deal with. I don't want to see them. I'm not going to see them. Never going to pick them. You get rid of them. And if you get rid of them for a loss, or if you get rid of them for profit, or if you just let them go, or if you loan them out, I don't give a fuck. I'm not dealing with them. That's what I would be saying. I'm a head coach. I will coach my team. I am going to pick my team, and the rest you can deal with because you hire these fucking this detritus. You can deal with it. I'm not
Yeah.
here. I'm not here to deal. I'm not here to clean up your fucking mess. Well, not all of it anyway. Um, so yeah, that's what I reckon he's going to do. Not knowing Pochettino is the eternal pragmatist of a manager that he is, he's not going to try and shoehorn 30 odd fucking players into a fucking. He's not going to bother with that. He's going to turn around and go, right, lads. Impress me in this preseason. You play. If you don't, um, I'll recommend the club actually take your squad number off of you and you're playing with reserves. You know, that's kind of how it is with
Mm.
them. And given that lots of those players are on extremely extremely heavily incentivized and very expensive long term contracts, they're gonna be like, what the fuck? I'm gonna be playing what 7 years in the fucking reserves? The fuck?
Well, that's just it. Like this is where they shot themselves in the foot because in a sense, when you were mentioning there, like how Pochettino is going to pick the team, like realistically, he doesn't really have a choice in that because with the way the amortization is, and they kind of do have to fulfill these contracts. Like he is stuck with Mudryk, Madueke, Enzo, Badashile, and both Fofana's. By the way, Wesley Fofana has been dreadful this season. Cucurella, and so forth. So he
Oh,
is stuck with those players, right?
yeah.
Those are the players that they cannot sell because it's too much of a markup. Um, but the players that he's going to lose because they're at the end of those contracts, Azpilicueta possibly, potentially to Barcelona, because those are the type of deals Barcelona's going to make. Kante on a free, Thiago Silva if he's not signing up on a free, Kovacic, Loftus-Cheek, Mason Mount, Pulisic, Hudson-Odoi. Okay, some of those are not the biggest losses, like Aubameyang and perhaps, if I'm being cruel, Pulisic and Bakayoko, who's still somehow on the books at Chelsea. He's been on loan like 3 or 4 different seasons, and he's still there. But if you're losing Loftus-Cheek, Kovacic, and Mason Mount from your midfield, those are big identifying Chelsea players. You know,
Yeah, that's. I think you were on to it there at the beginning. Like the players that he's stuck with are the players that he probably won't want, and the players that he's losing are the players that he kind of wants.
Yeah.
So it's bad. I think Mount is done at Chelsea. I think
so.
I think he's fed up there with that, and he's just like, nah, I don't care. Even if Pochettino was actually really very, very good at his job, he's just done there. It's he's not gonna give a fuck anymore. Kante, I don't know what's gonna happen with him. Silva will probably sign on. I don't know too many teams. He's actually playing. He's their player of the season.
He was from the Chelsea games I've seen this season, he was by far the best player, and it wasn't even close.
Yeah. So that's basically it. So I reckon he will. I mean, like Chelsea will just give him more money, and he'd be like, "But like, I will not get this money anywhere else unless I want to go."
39 years old, absolutely fucking nuts.
He doesn't want to play in the Middle East. He wants to be where the action is. Like, So yeah, there's that. But the thing is that they've got themselves into a position now where they cannot make any more mistakes in the transfer windows. They just can't. It's going to be difficult to see them signing anybody in, but they probably will need to bring people in because what they've got is absolute dead wood from it's just
from the remnants of 4 different teams.
Remnants of 4 different managers. Like he has got like Pochettino is going to find weak spots in that squad that he is going to need to fill that he won't be able to with his ridiculous squad.
Yeah.
I was just crazy. Like that's just insane. So it's hilarious. Like I'm actually I'm more interested now in watching what Chelsea do than I've been for ages now, because I really want to see how Poch actually tries to fix this.
Yeah.
Because it's just a disaster, and he's gonna have to go in and fight fires.
Yeah, exactly. And again, if you're any other team in the Premier League, you're looking at Chelsea and you're circling like vultures, because again, I'm throwing out like names here that any of the new, I mentioned those teams there, the blue chip teams, the ones sniffing at European football, if they haven't got it already. But you can imagine the likes of a Brighton thinking, oh yeah, we can snag Conor Gallagher. Or Aston Villa going like, you know what, Kante might not be about shouting a free deal, or Kovacic could be going for dirt cheap as well. Like he's probably going to go back to he might go to Spain or Germany. But you can imagine the likes of like Levi Colwill, who had a brilliant season at Brighton, right? Really flew under the radar, but was one of their main starters for the entire season. He's absolutely going to get snapped up permanently by Brighton. There's no doubt about that. And then all these other like players would resell value. The likes of your Hudson-Odoi won't stay on at Leverkusen. He didn't even play for them this season. But again, they're at risk of losing someone like potentially Lewis Hall, who came into the side and was very, very good. But his contract is only 2 years, and considering some of them are there for 8 years, he's potentially at risk of losing as well. And again, you might have these people you're not expecting to lose, like Reece James. Is he going to hang around? Is Ben Chilwell going to hang around? Trevor Chalobah? These are the questions they're going to be asking you.
I think James and Chilwell will hang around. It's more the case of like that they're just too injury prone,
Probably, yeah.
They're very, very injury prone. Like, don't get me wrong, they are incredible fullbacks. Like Reece James is a player that's really makes me angry seeing him in a Chelsea shirt, because I'll be like, I would fucking love to see him in an Arsenal jersey.
Mm-hmm.
He is fucking brilliant. Chilwell as well. He is absolutely brilliant. I was like, fuck, where did they dig these players out of? But they just can't stay fit. Like, and they're those types of players that like seem to pick up like ridiculous injuries. Like, it's not always rolled his ankle, he'll be out for 2 weeks. Always tweaked the hamstring, he'll be out for a month. It's he took a fall from a height of 18 inches. He's now going to be out for 7 months. You know,
Yeah.
like, that's the kind of thing. Like, oh, he's tweaked his hamstring. He's now going to be out for 3 months. I was like, what? What the fuck did he tweak it with? A combine harvester? Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
how the fuck? Like, that's the kind of thing. They always seem to have injuries. They pick up injuries that keep them out for extended lengths of time. And so yeah, like other than pray that James and Chilwell stay fit for a full season, um, probably build your midfield around Enzo Fernandez.
Mm.
Um, they're going to need another goalkeeper, despite the
Well,
fact that
Mendy's definitely going. I can see him leaving for sure. Because I think Kepa's got that has won that particular battle like between the
well,
two.
Kepa's not only won that battle, but also the two of them are ridiculously error prone. Both of them need to go. You know, um, errors have crept into Mendy's game that are really bad, and
Yeah.
Kepa is not the keeper to take them forward. He can make big saves, but he's not a very good keeper. Well, for not for Chelsea's level,
Mm.
or not for where they see their level is. He's not the keeper to do it. Um, so they're probably going to need a proper goalkeeper, and then they've got to still deal with Lukaku. They need a striker. They've no goal scorers, so they
Yeah.
need to get a fucking striker in.
Like
And
they
it's
could
just
they
like,
could reasonably start the season with Lukaku and Aubameyang up front, and my goodness, that is a pedestrian lineup.
holy,
That's
but yeah, but they won't because Aubameyang's shot.
yeah.
It's done. He's a busted flush. Lukaku does not want to be there anymore.
Hmm.
He's a busted flush as well. Like I don't see how Poch is going to change his mind. Not if Tuchel couldn't. He's not going to. I
No.
mean, what the fuck? Like, um, yeah, and you just fucking awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it. They're going to be a fascinating little pretense to next season. So then when we come down to the bottom half of the table then, and we can kind of chalk off some of the teams that are safe and comfortably mid table, like Fulham, Palace, who brought back old White back, and you have to say the fucking the fans and players are delighted that he was back.
Yeah,
Like it's like
he came back and he is cooking.
yeah, it's like that. It's just it's like Roy was like the grand that was like they're all collective granddad and just seeing him for the first time in like months, and then they all just like are just suddenly buzzing again. Like Eze scoring goals for fun, and Elise and Ayu and all of them just suddenly just weight lifted, whatever it was.
Elise has
And
been brilliant.
he's
Elise
been very
is
good. Yeah.
fantastic. I really love him as a player.
Mhm.
But again, like with Palace, what happens with Zaha? What's happening there?
I think Zah's gone. I think he's done. I
I
think
think
but
he's done.
where's he
Yeah,
gonna go is
they've
the
offered him a
question.
new contract. They've offered him 200K a week. I think
Yeah.
he's just like he's wondering if any of the larger teams are going to come in for him, and I think he's starting to regret not pushing earlier, like maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago for a leave because he's now 30. He's
Yeah.
I think he should have left it a couple of seasons back. He really
And,
should.
and whichever team he's going to go to, that's kind of where he's staying because, like, realistically, they'll offer him a 3-year deal and then off you
Yeah,
go to
he's
wherever
got
else.
nothing after. He's got this is his last big deal. Yeah,
It's very much like like this will be the deal that gets him to Spurs, and that's it. That Spurs is your ceiling. But again, he might just be happy to stay at Palace. If there's a field goal factor with the club, don't knock it. Like like see what you have like because they seem to have a lovely team there. I think Vieira just kind of just upset them too much, like just expecting too much of them. And Roy just got them to enjoy their football again. Like
yeah.
it's very evident they're just enjoying playing again. Wolves was a curious case as well this season. Bruno Lage just too pragmatic for their own good. Then Lopetegui came in, get them playing a bit of free football, and then it just kind of got a bit stagnant again. So I'll be watching them again this season because that team is very very pedestrian. It's very slow, very cantankerous, and just this reliance on like Portuguese mercenaries is going to backfire them eventually. And again, there's probably players that's going to move on there. So more on this then. West Ham's season, Neil, I think it's fair to say, is going to be defined by the Conference League final if they actually beat Fiorentina and get themselves into the Europa League. Again, finishing 14th in the league is probably not the same as winning a trophy, monetary wise, but it's a monkey off Moisey's back and it's a monkey off West Ham's back, isn't it? By winning some sort of silverware.
I don't really think so. It won't be a monkey off West Ham's back because the prize money for winning the Conference League is about 1.5 million, and
True, but
they
they do get
spent
into Europa League. So
Yeah, they do game the Europa League, where the prize money is only slightly larger. But what I mean, like, is that right? The prize money is 1.5 million, but they spent 160 million to get into a relegation fight.
very true.
I just this season's been a complete disaster. To be honest with you, the only person who gives a shit about the Conference League really is Moyes because he's done. He's done there. He's not staying at West Ham. They don't want him. They need somebody else. His counter-attacking tactics were outmoded. Um, he's fucking done. They don't want him there anymore. They're going to hire in somebody new, or well, they should. They really, 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 really should. They missed out on relegation, by not by much. They were really looking odds on for it. They were really toying with it.
Yeah.
And you know they're gonna be losing a lot of very key players because they're shit. They're absolute shit. You know, you may turn around and say like they're so success starved that a Conference League fucking final is something that they're clinging to. And fine, if you want to do that, you know, you whatever gets you through the day. But like you can't pretend that reality is something that happens to other people. The reality of West Ham's situation is that the league has been absolute garbage. And they're losing. They're going to be losing some of their best players. They will be losing their best players. You know.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, Declan Rice is definitely out the door. It's just a question of where he's going. Possibly Arsenal, possibly United, possibly Man City. It's hard to tell with him.
I don't. The funny thing. Here's the funny thing, right? Because there's lots of reports, and again, as I said, 90% of reports are 95% bullshit. I see a lot of the reports there. It's like, oh, West Ham have placed £120 million fucking price tag on Declan Rice, and I'm going like, what makes West? First off, let's assume that it's true. I don't think it is, right? But I think it may be put out by the squad, by the club, to kind of insinuate that maybe they're in a position of power when they really, really aren't. Right? Rice is gone. Right? He doesn't want to be there. He's rejected every single extension that they've offered him. Right? He wants to go to a Champions League team, and he will leave for free next season. So at what point, where do they think they're in a position of power to ask for 9 figures before the decimal point for him? Yeah, I was like, that's the Frankie Boyle joke where like it's like your septic tank's exploded and you're stood there head to toe covered in shit, and you're talking to a plumber going, "I'm prepared to make you an offer." You know, like it's like, nah, sorry, dude. Right, you're gonna take everything. So he's going to a Champions League team, right? So that means obviously there's only 4 teams that can realistically he will sign for, right? So that's Liverpool is out, Chelsea are out. So the 4 teams are City, Arsenal, United, and Newcastle. I don't think he'll go to Newcastle, right?
For what it's worth, I believe Munich are in the conversation.
Maybe Munich, right? Let's just stick with the Premier League
English side, yeah.
Because I do believe he wants to stay in England, or it would be his preference to. So you're probably not going to go to Newcastle. No offense to Newcastle, because also I don't really think they'd utilize him very well.
There's no real space for him when you have Willock and you have Gamara's there. They're better for what Rice would give them, if that makes sense. It's like adding something else into the mixture that wasn't needed.
Yeah, exactly. So they could use him, but they don't need him. Ditto with City.
Yeah, like, they've got Rodri. They're covered.
Yeah, he's not getting ahead of who's there and the backups that he would be replacing. I mean, why would you spend a 9-figure sum to replace a backup?
Exactly.
No. So that narrows it down. Man United they could use him. They don't need him. Plus, Man United have got needs in quite another lot of other parts of that squad. And again, as I said before, when they're signing Kane, or with them signing Kane, Ten Hag's going to have maybe 200, maybe 250 million quid to spend this summer. Are they really going to spunk half of that on a player that they don't need when they've got quite a lot of needs in other places? They need more centre backs. They need centre back depth. They cannot keep playing Maguire. They cannot persist with Maguire. They need to replace him with somebody. They've lost Phil Jones, so they probably need 2 centre backs maybe. They might be looking at another goalkeeper.
They almost certainly are looking at another goalkeeper. That has to be done.
Yeah. They're going to have to replace like Martial. They're going to have to replace fucking a good few of that squad.
I think Fred is on the way out as well. Apparently, the word on the street is he might be going to Fulham.
Yeah,
Just so,
Fred.
incidentally,
So
yeah.
yeah, he might be out. So that's the thing. Like they could use him again. They don't need him, and he wouldn't really play there. I think Arsenal are really the only squad, the only team where they're like, we have got a space for you in our team. We
Yeah,
will play
because
you every
you're
single
losing
fucking game.
Xhaka and you could potentially lose Partey, so
Yeah,
you almost certainly need Rice.
exactly. But the thing is, that's why people are saying, but oh, what Royce or Casado, Royce or Casado. I was like, why don't Arsenal go for both? You
Yeah.
know, like we do need both, and that's my point. So, like, Arsenal are the only team with a kind of pressing need for this. So they're the only team that are gonna. But also, Arsenal have shown in the past with the Mudryk deal, and with other previous transfer deals that if you take the piss, we'll just walk away.
Hmm.
You know, like Shakhtar took the piss with Mudryk, and we went, no, fine, let him go to Chelsea. We don't care. You
Yeah.
know, we'll sign somebody else. We got in Trossard. I think we got the better deal.
As has been proven, yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
it's
Yeah.
very much
Yeah.
proven. You know,
So,
now
so yeah, that's gonna be the interesting kind of like quirk of what happens again. And like West Ham's story has been like they paper over the cracks of what's been individually bad seasons for the likes of Antonio and really, let's be fair, bad Jared Bowen.
yeah, Bowen
And
is brilliant as well. He should be playing for a better team. He needs to
he
be
should be.
pillaged out there.
Yeah, potentially. And again, you never know. He was on Liverpool's radar last season, but I don't think he'll be on it this year. But even then, the likes of like the players who have now just faded into obscurity, the likes of Lucas Paqueta, who's only come good recently, and Scamacca, who I don't think has even been seen since before the World Cup. I know
Oh,
he's been injured and so forth.
Skamaka's been garbage. Him and Cornet, they've just been flops. Like
And Danny
even
Ings as well. Yeah.
yeah, even Susek. Like Susek works hard, but my God, no,
He's had a bad season too. He's just
he's so
like a
bad.
lot of them are just faded. Yeah. But like I said, I don't think they can blame. Again, there is a correlation between West Ham having 2 long seasons and now suddenly this World Cup, but the drop off is not that significant. There are other circumstances to that as well. So if we go further down, then we got Bournemouth, who, considering that they started off the season losing 9-0 to Liverpool and having Scott Parker basically bitch and moan about not having any money to spend. They get rid of him. They don't get necessarily a big name to replace him. They just let Gary O'Neill take charge of the season. And I think perhaps you might we might agree on this, Neil. Because they didn't really have a sniff at survival going by our predictions. But would you say Bournemouth have pretty much just been able to survive solely because everyone else around them panicked and started like turfing out their managers and replacing them, and a lot of them kind of, let's be fair, got worse.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, they survived by the we were less shit.
The stability, as it were,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, like, they got bought out by a new owner, um, new coach, new owner. Uh, uh, it's really good. I mean, like, they survived. Job fucking done.
Yeah, pretty
I
much.
mean,
That's all he needed to do. Yeah.
really all they needed to do. I mean, now their main issue is keeping the stars they've got. Um, Lerma's already off to Palace, you know,
So I believe, yeah.
for free. Yeah.
And
Um,
I think Billing could be on the move as well. Again, I will be talking about Billing later on. I think if you look at his numbers, he's actually been one of the better number sixes in the league. So, which is again comes across as a surprise. But even the likes of players that have come out proper, like Tavernier and Solanke, kind of come out of his shell now a good bit. And again, just like picking up goals whenever they need to, like just enough to win games. Um, so they've definitely been a surprise in that sense. But like I said, my suspicion would be they're still one of the weakest sides in the squad, or squads in the league. I think they just capitalize on the chaos around them to survive. Um, but then again, you look at some of the teams that were there anyway. They probably did need to do a change. But timing didn't work out for them in a sense.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And fair play to them for giving Gary O'Neill the time to learn on the job.
yeah, pretty much.
In a maelstrom of absolute mediocrity
Yeah.
around them, and they stuck their guns. New owner, he's positive. He's backing his guy, Gary O'Neill, letting him, as I said, learn. And fair play. Like, again, they got in a good coach. I think Gary O'Neill is a good coach. Um, they got in a good coach and they backed him. Now maybe they didn't back him all the way to the hilt. They're not splashing huge amounts of cash. They can't do that. They don't have it. But they've backed their guy. They've given him support. They've given him the ability to learn from his mistakes, and they've given him the ability to settle a team and really get a bit of stability. As you said, stability was what they were going for, because they looked around them and saw, what do these teams don't have? Oh yeah, they're fucking chaotic. They have no stability. All we have to do is just keep on keeping on, and we'll be good. And yeah, they were great. Again, as we said at the start of the season, and we didn't predict that at all. We all had them going down. I think I had them rock last. I had them dead last.
I think all of us had myself and Burpa had them rock last. Yourself, Neil, actually had Forest beneath them.
Oh, White Forest beneath them.
Yeah. Now, again, speaking of Forest, they are a similar story to them as well, because we were remarking on the sheer amount of players they were buying in to sustain this Premier League challenge, and they bought more in January. And again, a lot was being made about Forest having this literally, and I'm not even joking when I say literally trigger happy owner, who famously tried to find his own league because Olympiacos was too good for the Greeks apparently. But he comes in and he's beloved by the Forest fans just for being a character and a personality, and let's be fair, professional Brian Blessed impersonator. But he keeps Steve Cooper in the job. He lets him do what he needs to do, and he backs him. He brings in Keylor Navas as an upgrade on Dean Henderson, bringing in journeymen like Danilo Pereira coming in, and again just players that just needed to kind of take specific roles in the squad to get them to survive, and it does work. But I think what works actually is the players that come good towards the end of the season are Gibbs White, Awaniyi, Worrell in defense, and Navas himself. So it's a mixture of the players that he brought in, but also the players that Cooper backed to be the spine, the front line, as it were, of the Forest team. They repaid his trust and his faith, and they kept him up. And I'm actually shocked to say that, really, because this formula doesn't normally work.
Yeah, fully agree with that. A good comment I saw about Cooper is that he's either the greatest conman of all time or genuinely a brilliant coach and wonderful human being.
I'm inclined to say the latter.
I was going to go fairly with the latter. I think Cooper's a very good coach. The owners have rightly realized that. Oh no, it only works with him, and stuck by him. But again, we were basing off the sheer amount of players that they were buying in. I mean, they knew they needed fucking 15 players, got twice as many. A lot of them made the squad actively worse.
Jesse Lingard, John Joe Shelby. Yeah.
They were carrying more than 11 injuries. They were carrying 12 or 13 injuries for half the season. So unbelievably, they were one of the few teams with a 25-man squad getting stretched.
Yeah.
That's it. Guys like Jesse Lingard, I don't think Lingard worked out well for them. That deal only worked out well for his bank account. Yates is really good when he's fit. Again, he's just too injury prone, but he's kind of like that player you really wanted, that he's a homegrown and a fan of the club.
Yeah.
But it worked out. All's well that ends well.
Pretty much, yeah.
It got hairy there, but yeah, you answered. I'm surprised, and they showed me. I know fuck all about football.
Yeah, well, as it turns out, a lot more than the basket cases beneath them. So we might as well talk about these as a quartet, Neil, because at a certain stage in Premier League history, these are considered the core of the.
I will say one thing, that it was pointed. I was listening to the second captain's podcast, and they said if there was ever a season where 4 teams really should be relegated, not 3, this was it.
Oh, 100%, yeah. 100%.
If the FA could just pull out a card and go, well, actually, sorry lads, sorry Everton, you're going down as well, because you've been
it's a proverbial fucking what's the wild card entry.
Yeah.
It's just in reality TV show they spin the wheels oh, actually no, the commentary are actually going up. What a surprise!
Yeah, we're just gonna take them because you are.
Well, we actually like them, but no. like I said, this was at one point the core of the Premier League table. Like this, like if we chart back, you're probably seeing these four teams together in the mid-table, and just this season it all collapsed at the same time. Well, listen, it didn't. It's not to say they collapsed; they got replaced. Really, like these teams got replaced as the proverbial likable teams in the league, if you want to call them that. Like Southampton being the sellable assets. You have Leeds who had the Bielsa ball, Leicester having been the kind of unofficial seventh place team, and then Everton, the perennial seventh place team. And they all went crazy at different times. Like Southampton were kind of in that kind of territory. Leeds were tipping that way too. Leicester, the writing was on the wall for Leicester, it has to be said, at the start of the season. And Everton had just narrowly escaped last year. So this was on the cards for some of them, and for some others, they were caught blindsided. So we'll start at the bottom, I suppose. Southampton, they knew their fate fairly early on. Around the same time, they hired Nathan Jones as their manager, who has proven to be perhaps the greatest charlatan in English football since John Carver. And I can't believe I've said that because he was a famous charlatan. I think Ali Dia would actually be impressed with the hustle of Nathan Jones, to be honest. I'm happy to say that Nathan Jones relegated Southampton. Absolutely relegated them. Like I know that in my mind, if they had got someone else in, if they got Sellez in, who I think is actually quite good, given the tools that he had and the appalling recruitment that Southampton had, I think he would have done something with them. But just those few months with Nathan Jones in charge and making the situation worse was a death knell.
Well, it was hilarious.
It was fucking entertaining. Don't get me wrong. I'm being perfectly honest here. Like nothing makes me more amused than seeing this guy literally fucking die on stage, Alan Partridge style.
Oh,
But like
he was a bin fire, man. He was an
yeah,
absolute fucking bin fire. Possibly the craziest few months I've ever seen at a club. I was just like, holy shit. I was never more tuned into Southampton than I ever was under Nathan Jones's tenure. He was fucking crazy. I genuinely thought the guy was crazy. I really did think he'd gone off his meds.
he is genuinely the deluded Brendan Rodgers account that was on Twitter. Like he is actually that account.
He is actually what would happen if the deluded Brendan Rodgers account got its wish to be a real boy.
Yes.
And it's not just this absolutely ludicrous press conferences. And then you watch the team's tactics that he's feeling. It's like, this guy doesn't have a clue. He's either nuts or he's stupid. And I don't know which one is worse or better. It's crazy. Like it's absolutely.
I actually have a few of his quotes up here if you want to have some fun. Nathan Jones on Wolves having a man sent off when Southampton were leading 1-0. For me, the 10 men was to our detriment because it made it a free hit for them and added pressure onto us.
Fucking hell.
Nathan Jones on curing homesickness. When I went to Luton as a player, I was homesick. The manager left and my next move was to go to Spain. No logic in that, as I was homesick in Luton, so I decided to go to Spain. Nathan Jones on his life's alternative timeline. I enjoy a challenge. I want to be the best version of me. I could have stayed in the mining community, been a PE teacher.
This is the Welsh one, yeah.
Married a nice Welsh girl, beautiful, but I didn't. I want to test myself on every level, and that's nothing against Welsh women. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Is this like an AI? What the hell is going on? Like, statistically, there weren't many better than me around Europe in terms of aggression, clean sheets, defending your box, balls in the box, expected goals, all those things. He is comparing himself to Man City there, by the way, while he was at Luton. He was second to Pep Guardiola. Like that is a man who I would wish you could bottle that confidence and sell it. Like, my God, what a charlatan!
Yeah, I kind of miss him. Like
he should be an Spurs manager.
That's it.
Like,
man, please. Oh my God. If they fucking hired him, I would actually I'd have to go change. I would jizz in my pants. That would be the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I want for Father's Day. Nathan Jones being hired by Spurs. Um, Crazy. Yeah, but he's insane. Like there was kind of like that point where like I think it was his press conference after he got stuffed by Brentford. And I was just laughing. I was reading a transcript of that, and because I didn't see it live, and I was laughing so hard. I was going, "Is anybody else really starting to like this guy?" Because this is hilarious. This is brilliant. This is pure comedy. Um,
It's the
yeah,
fact that like most of his like actual anecdotes always start with when I was at Luton. It's just like,
yeah,
look, I don't want to be personal about this, but don't talk about the other woman when you're at the press
yeah,
conference. You know, kind
exactly.
of way. It's like the one was Southampton, Nathan. You're in Southampton now. What about your team? Like, like fucking hell, like
But
absolute
yeah,
joke.
I'm like outside of that, I'm like Southampton have always been a sell first to buy club,
Yeah.
and they bought without selling, and you really need to fucking roll strikes if you're going to do that because
Mm.
you're compounding your failures.
Well,
Oh
well,
my
that was
god!
that was a big part of it was that they were buying players in a certain age group without doing their due diligence. So they were buying players that like were physical specimens, let's say, or they were had a bit of a potential markup and all these things. But then you put them all together and they don't click. There's nothing between them. And they're trying to shine up players like Romeo Lavia, and I'll be honest, like I don't see the hype. Um, Neither do I see the likes of Sulemana, who scored two against us this weekend. And again, that was down to us being shit as opposed to them being good. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
Um, there's a lot to do with that. Now, again, Southampton are probably a team that will probably look at a relegation and go, do you know what? We probably needed this. We needed a fucking slap to the face and just to get back up working, like how Burnley had it, and make something out of it. Um, I can't say the same for the next two in Leeds and Leicester, where they were very dependent on staying in the Premier League, particularly Leicester, but Leeds first anyway. The Marsh thing was starting to go south. They were not scoring goals. Even though Rodrigo was having the season of his life at Leeds, he was practically carrying the team on his back. Then they had Harvey Grazia in, and then Big Sam, as the kind of the last ditch effort. But again, another club I can identify as making the wrong coach at the wrong time in Javi Grazia, who I don't rate personally, even at his time in Watford. The season in Watford were good was a freak accident, and I will refuse any evidence to the contrary. Um, and Javi Grazia was not credited, should not be credited for that. I like his time at Leeds is evidence of that. Um, I don't think I've ever seen a team defend as badly as Leeds. I'll be honest. Like even in the last game against Spurs, where they are being told keep it solid, get a goal, defend, and we go from there. And you've got players who are experienced heads like Robin Koch and Rasmus Christensen and Luke Ayling. And these are players who have played, some have played Champions League football and some have played in Leeds for years. And they're running after the ball when there's someone already on ball watch, like there's someone closer to them who will have the ball, they run away and let a Spurs player in. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? This is the most basic thing possible. You only see this when you're playing like your 10-year-old cousin on FIFA. Like, you don't do this. And no wonder you got relegated. I think they have the worst defense in the league. Perhaps Bournemouth were worse than them, but they certainly felt like they conceded the most goals anyway. Um, Actually confirming, yes, they were actually the worst defenders in the league. 78 conceded this season. Um, Absolutely appalling, and rightfully relegated from that. Um, and it's also kind of refreshing to see that the Big Sam gamble doesn't always work. It actually does. It's like the money in the bank sometimes. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. Sometimes you don't win the belt. So, but like in fairness, they gave him like 5 games. That was too little, too late. Leicester, though, I think are one of the big stories, though, because I know a lot. Like this was kind of something that was brewing under the radar for Leicester because Rodgers had made a case at the start of the season that he had no money to spend, partly because the owners have kind of like not necessarily lost their funding, but they've lost a bit of money, and partly a lot of that money was going to a new training facility to get them up to basically a spec like they were a couple of years ago. So basically, the 60 million that Brendan would have been able to spend is going to a training facility. and he has nothing to spend on. And to the extent where when Kasper Schmeichel, like, surprisingly leaves the club for Nice, a basket case in their own right, they're left with Danny Ward or Daniel Everson as their only two goalkeepers. They don't have any other options. They don't get anybody in, and they still don't get anybody in. And then you have all these other players and kind of living in stagnancy. And I think Leicester just kind of presumed they'd get better, didn't they? Like, they thought they'd
Yeah,
get it, they didn't.
I think they're the worst out of the relegation teams, even though they finished 18th.
Yeah,
Because just the hubris was fucking, and the delusion was just unbelievable. And as I said, this is a really good squad. This is a comfortable top half of the Premier League table squad. Maybe they're not challenging for Europe, but they're definitely not 18th.
No,
They were
that's
absolute
sure.
garbage. They played complete shit. They literally just turned over and presented to almost every team that showed up. Every single fucking player was just like, oh, yeah, we'll survive, fuck that. And that came from the manager. Like that fully comes from the manager. Players don't get complacent on their own. That comes from somewhere, and it's from the manager. And if anything, this Leicester season will fully put to bed any of the lingering notion that Arsenal should have hired Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah.
Because they then ended up giving him a new, very lucrative contract. But yeah, that for me, that's the only silver lining of the Leicester season. It's that now I won't have to constantly say to people, Brendan Rodgers needs to get in the fucking bin. I said it.
I think
said
it's actually, it has proven that, like, with Brendan, there's always an excuse. There's always a mitigating circumstance for his failure. And again, with Liverpool, it was a transfer committee. And when it was with a Celtic, it was like, oh, well, the SPL is this, that, and the other, and there's only so much I can do, and all this sort of stuff. And with Leicester, yes, he won the FA Cup last season, and it was a tremendous effort from the team. They deserve that win. That squad deserves, if you want, I hate using that phrase, but they deserve the win. They deserve the cup between them. But yeah, to do that, you have to sustain the success, and they didn't do that. They didn't build on it. Their recruitment was objectively bad. I think they've signed some of the worst players in the league in their positions, when they should be first team players. To the extent where Jamie Vardy hasn't been put out of mothballs, or out of the fucking courtroom based on the wife, just solely so that he can get back to scoring goals. And he's like 35. You can't keep doing this to him. There's only so many fucking defibrillators on staff. Like,
yeah.
So in a way, Leicester's rule book is going to get like torn up and started again. And there is hope, because look at how Burnley did it this season. Burnley literally tore up the first team and started again. They sold everybody. There's very few people on board, and even those who stayed on for the season are now going. They're not going back with them to the Premier League. They're staying in the Championship. So that Burnley team are brand new. They are literally 100% different to how they left the Premier League last time. So they can follow that blueprint and try and basically make a team from scratch. Do they do that with Dean Smith, or did he try and rehabilitate Graham Potter and try something else there? Like, if I was Graham Potter and I saw Leicester knocking, I'd say, fucking hell yeah, this is my project. This is what I would love to do, But that's not my decision. But yeah, I think they're a big loss as well, because I think Leicester, like, they are financially very vulnerable, so they will need to sell and they need to buy cheap.
That's my point. Like, as I was saying before, they're going to get picked clean.
Yeah.
And it's a fire sale as well. They're in the West Ham. They're not like West Ham. They're like, well, what are you prepared to offer us? I was like, no, I'm going to offer you the lowest amount of money that I can think of that you won't vomit blood at, and you're going to take it, because you're going into the Championship. You've got an 85% debt to income ratio. You're fucked. Like, you are totally screwed. You're not going to have the Premier League.
I'm actually just seeing, but I actually didn't notice at the start, they are actually going to be losing 10 players immediately.
Yeah.
Because I just actually looked at, they have 10 players who are out of contract this season. And I'm actually surprised, because it's practically the first team is gone. Soyuncu, gone. Bertrand, Evans, Tielemans, Vardy, Perez, Jose Perez, that is, Amarte, Mendy, Pratt, and Chowdhury. All gone. They are all out of contract, and like realistically, they can't afford all those players, so they're all gone on freeze. So not even getting any money for these players.
No. They, on top of that, they're going to be losing James Maddison.
They will lose. Yeah, definitely lose Maddison. Who else? Like they don't have that many sellable assets. Probably in like Ndidi is not the asset he was a couple of years ago. Iheanacho probably is sellable. Castagna is definitely sellable.
Yeah.
But everyone else is. I'm not blown away by them. I'll be honest. Harvey Barnes, Harvey Barnes is definitely sellable.
Well, see, the thing is, I reckon they are sellable, but just not at the kind of huge amounts that Leicester would like, or that Leicester probably would have gotten had they not been under the cosh of, going into the fucking championship. Had they not been like, well, we're going into a league where they only allow like 40 million in losses, whereas the Premier League allow 105 million, and they were struggling to even stay under that.
Yeah, they were on the course of FFP, so they will feel that. If they don't get promoted immediately back, they're in serious trouble.
Yeah, so they're gonna get fire. They're gonna get fire sailed. That's pretty much it. I mean, it's fucking terrible.
It's not looking good anyway.
So like relegation clauses only help so much. I mean, in particular, we're like Leeds. Like Leeds have just announced recently that Brendan Aronson, Aronson, he had a relegation clause in his contract, so he'll be going.
Yeah.
So
now, in fairness, he was not great shakes. Unfortunately, he was a major disappointment. But like I said, those are the players that like they would have banked on being a sellable asset. They're chasing those profits so much that you kind of lost sight of like, oh fuck, I'm ready to get. I'm actually 19th in the league. Those are the things they kind of upset about it. So yeah, that's kind of where they're at the minute. So those three teams are going, and they're being replaced by, as I mentioned, Burnley, Sheffield United, who are pretty much back with the same squad that left the Premier League, and Luton Town, which are the most memeable team at the moment because of their home stadium.
This is something that they put forward. This is coming from like their official account. This isn't something that like a random and exuberant fan has done. They've been pushing this forward themselves. That like, to get into the stadium, you have to walk basically through a row of houses. It's like this is now our Premier League ground. Wonderful.
And like I said, like I think that the three teams that are coming in are interesting in their own right, because obviously, like Burnley have that Vincent Kompany curiosity where like this is his first, like he's had the job in Anderlecht and he's come into the championship and basically like completed it. Let's be fair here, with a completely new team. They're all bedded in at the same time, and again we have a vested interest there. Josh Cullen being his first signing, so the whole team is built around him. Wout Weghorst technically still on the books, so we're gonna see him back, excitingly enough. But they're all like ridiculously young players, and they're all being bedded in at the same time. They're all growing up with each other in a sense. So it's gonna be fascinating to see how they get on, and do they still keep recruiting the same way, or do they start, shall we say, going for more experienced players? So they're an interesting quality. As I mentioned, Sheffield United. I'll be honest with you, I didn't think they'd actually get to the Premier League because, as I said, they weren't the second best team in the championship this year for me. That would go to Middlesbrough. But the difference was that Michael Carrick didn't have enough time to make them second best team, if that makes sense. He took over from Wilder. And I just feel like there was probably more in the tank for them, really. And they would have been a better outfit. But like I said, the Sheffield United team are pretty much as you were from the last time. Sanderberg is still there. Brewster still there, Egan and Basham and Baldock are still there, so it's as you were. So we'll see how that goes for them. But Luton Town are the most interesting outfit there. There's no doubt about that. And it's not as if they're going to be signing high-profile players either. They are saving up for a new stadium that is coming in a couple of years' time, so they are not going to be splashing the cash. But what is actually interesting is like, what do they actually do? Like, do they keep loan players that they've signed on? Do they sign like what kind of players can they get in? So they are at least a very interesting outfit. Again, just the novelty of Pep Guardiola having to go through someone's fucking bedroom essentially to get to his dressing room is inherently funny. So that's something for us to look forward to anyway. But Neil, this has been a bumper episode of the podcast, and we are gonna finish it on a segment we do every season as part of our Premier League autopsy, and that is our best 11 and worst 11. Now we do this under a condition called TIFO rules, even though the fuckers changed it this year, the bastards. But we're keeping it. We're keeping traditions. So we're going to do it. So we are picking our what we think is the best team from the league, but one person per team, including the manager. So if you pick one player in a certain position, you cannot pick another from that team. So it has to be 11 players plus the manager from 12 different clubs. So, would you like to start off with your goalkeeper, or what's your formation actually, Neil? And we'll go from there.
I've tried to go for some kind of weird bastardized 4-4-2.
Nice.
So yeah, well, let's see how it goes. In goal, I have Emi Martinez.
Amy Martinez with Villa. Interesting. I have gone for a 4-2-2-2, which is just hilarious because it makes it sound like I'm a fucking budgie. But I've gone for in goal Alisson Becker. I think he has been by far and away Liverpool's best player this season. It does mean I'm knocking out Salah and Gakpo, but I think he has been our best player by country mile. Statistically, I think he saved us. He's prevented 11 certain goals for us, which, like, I don't know how many points that will convert to in real time, but that should be evidence enough of how poor we were defensively and how much he saved our bacon. So he is by far and away.
No, I fully agree. There. He was easily your best player. Very much so. Right, my back four.
Yeah.
I'll just go for them. I've got Trippier, me, Tarkowski, and Reece James.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, I should point out that Tarkowski and James were basically, those were selections not really based on current season performances, but based on what I know those players are.
The aptitude of them. Yeah, that's fair.
I've said before, I think Reece James is just an unbelievable fucking player. Tarkowski's a solid centre back. But in terms of actual real-time fucking season performances, nah, they've not been that good. Well, James has been when he's been fit, but that's been very seldom. And Tarkowski, well, Everton are a bin fire, basically. But in the other two, Trippier has been just wonderful for Newcastle, absolutely fucking brilliant. And me has just been a rock for Brentford. I mean, holy shit! Like, what can you say about that guy?
Like Ben Mee is one of those players where like it's evident like this, like Ben Mee like finished the previous season managing Burnley, so that's evidence enough of how good he is, how important he is to a squad. If that's the level of expertise you're getting in, so for Brentford to just pick him up on a free is a wonderful piece of business that cannot be expressed through like metrics and numbers. That's just the team is just objectively better having him there, and you can say the same with Tarkowski as well coming to Everton because. Like, again, on a free deal, Everton weren't losing anything there. They were just gaining something from him. So I think that's fair. My back four is slightly different. We do share our right back, though, in Kieran Trippier. I think he was by far and away the best right back in the league, and there was no competition. Because broadly speaking, and maybe I'm being controversial here, I think it was a poor year for wing backs this year. I think a lot of them
nobody was really doing the wing back system. Even teams that were actually playing back threes weren't really playing wing backs, weren't using wing backs. They were
using them different players in those roles.
Yeah, they were just flooding the backfield with centre backs and just going, fuck you, wing backs. There's no point.
Yeah, exactly. Like City were the trendsetters there because they decided to abandon Cancelo and their replacement left back was a disaster. So they said, right, we'll just pack it full of centre backs. So Stones and Akanji became de facto fullbacks, and it worked because a lot of the wingers, a lot of wide players were just nullified, and then Arsenal were kind of got there before them technically with Ben White being drafted out wide as well. And Dan Burn famously is kind of centre back come left back. So a lot of other teams are kind of getting to the same conclusion at the same time, and famously, then you can tell the teams that were very dependent on wide players like Liverpool and Chelsea very much got caught with that this year. But I've kept Trippier. My left back is actually Pervis Estupiñán from Brighton. So I have used my Brighton player early here, but again, a player who like comes in from relative obscurity, to come
I
in
honestly
and
thought you'd have gone for either McAllister or Matoma as your Brighton player.
I do, but I have better players in those roles. So a bit controversial, I know, but I have reasons, very much dirty, sexy reasons for those players. So Stupinian, were is for me like one of those examples of Brighton getting their recruitment right. You know, where a lesser team would lose Cucurella for 60 million and not know how to spend it, and they spend a fraction of that, find this player who was by far and away a better player than Cucurella ever was. More defensively stable, still gives them good chance to attack and scores goals. So I actually probably my pick for a left back of the season generally, even without the rules being applied. My centre back pairing is a bit left field, but I think it makes sense. Tyrone Mings from Aston Villa. Although to be fair, you could probably put Ezri Konsa in here as well. They're both about the same level for me.
Mm-hmm.
And Vacuum Anderson from Crystal Palace.
Oh.
I think he's criminally underrated in that Crystal Palace outfit. Mark Guehi gets a lot of the headlines for being the kind of the towering powerhouse of the team, but I think it's actually Anderson who's the better player.
He
And
can definitely play a better long ball.
he is a tremendous passer of the ball. Again, I think Guehi's the more marketable, and I think with a higher ceiling. But Anderson is one of those players that, like, if you had him in your side, you're fucking loving it because he gives you something that other players don't. So I went with Anderson and Mings for that. My centre back partnering. Which comes to your midfield then, Neil. Who is in your midfield?
Well, my midfield four are Saka, Rice, Elise, and Rashford.
Ooh, I see we're sharing players again. Elise, interesting
Yeah.
pick there for Palace. Yeah.
No, I think he is the Palace unsung hero. He's been
Hmm.
fucking brilliant. He's racked up 11 assists this season, the most out of anybody in the team. He's just been great. He's been the grease and the cog of that well. He's been the oil in that well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
Um, and he's what enables Eze to score those goals. For Zaha to make the runs. He's just a really brilliant, fantastic, taking over, advancing midfielder for them, and he's just been great for them.
Yeah.
He's really like I can't say enough about Lisa. I think he is different gravy. I love him. I think he's really
I,
good.
I think he's like I think you can apply it to a lot of players in that Palace side. They're all blue chip players, and I think sometimes they shine on different moments. They don't like the compliments you said to Elise there. You could apply to Eze or are you on their days, and that's how good that team can be. There's so much potential in that outfit, and like I said, they just need that season perhaps to just untap it and show how good they can be. And maybe with Roy Hodgson, that is the season to do it. So my back two and forward two, if we're doing the midfield together,
Mm-hmm.
I got two defensive midfielders in play. Again, just going by the logic of the formation, and in those two pockets is Philip Billing for Bournemouth and João Palhinha for Fulham.
Ah, yes.
So this is what I call the
He's
sword
in
and shield.
everybody's fucking. He's the Fulham player for everybody's team this
Yeah,
season is Paulinho because he has actually been really really fucking good. I'll have to
he
admit.
has, and again, it's a player that like people slept on a little bit. Like if I start with him in particular, again, like one of those players that like you know how good he is based off his time at Sporting Lisbon, but just somebody got there first, and Fulham got there first. But it's also like I think a lot of big teams like when a team like Wolves or Fulham take a pitch on a player like that because then that's kind of proof of concept that they're Premier League standards. So don't be surprised if Pellegrini gets poached potentially by Newcastle, potentially by Arsenal. Actually, let's be fair, it'd be good for Arsenal.
Mhm.
Um, another fit. I actually would believe that Philip Billing is Arsenal bound personally. I think he fits the profile that Xhaka and well, not necessarily Xhaka, but Partey is actually losing there. Again, whatever happens to Partey outside of football, um, I think Billing is a suitable replacement because he is genuinely one of those wall breakers. He is someone who just breaks up play, but also plays a pass and can sometimes get to the end of the ball. He's very very similar to the likes of a Partey and the like a very modern number six. You can play him deep, but he also makes those great marauding runs. Um, I couldn't really that's the best comparison I can make with him, but I just think like he has been a very important part of why Bournemouth have kept up solely because he breaks up play really, really well. He is that battering ram that team needs. And realistically, a lot of modern teams don't have. They have more erudite players in those roles, and Billing's kind of delightfully old fashioned in a way. My front two in the midfield are the same as yours, and that's Rashford and Saka. Just genuine stars,
Yeah,
actual fucking stars.
yeah.
I can't deny anything outside of that. So yeah, I don't have to wax lyrical about them because everyone
No.
has. So we'll move on then. So who's your front two? And let's see if it matches with mine.
Well, you've got one of my front two is the reason why I don't have Paulinho in my squad. One of the main reasons why I went 4-4-2 is so I could get Mitrovic and Haaland up front in my squads.
Very interesting. Because I've also got Haaland, but I've got him pairing up with Ivan Tony.
Yes. But you won't be able to field him. He's banned. He's done.
Doesn't matter. Don't care. Don't care. Fuck it. He can bet on himself, Neil. It doesn't matter.
To lose.
To lose. Yeah. I think Mitrovic has been nice to see in a way because he's always had that kind of moniker of being that kind of like Cameron Jerome mold of like too good for the championship but too bad for the Premier League, and it's nice to see he's actually kind of shaking that off now because he has been tremendous this season. Um, it's very telling as well that like we could not have just picked Haaland, but like he's the obvious choice, but also the simple choice as well. But they like other candidates for me for City would have been Rodri, Stones, probably Alvarez to be honest. I prefer Alvarez to Haaland myself, but
In all fairness, if I was going to go with a different City, if I was forced to pick a different City player other than Haaland, I'd have gone for Rodri.
yeah,
He's just been fucking ridiculous. He's a
yeah.
fucking absurd player.
He's the best in class for that number 6 position.
Yeah.
He is the best in class, and there's no getting behind it. So then we're left then with managers. So who do you have managing this intrepid squad, Neil?
Well, given the fact that I have no Brighton players in my squad, take a guess.
Ah, very good, Graham Potter. Okay, fair enough. Of course, Roberto De Zerbi. I think that's well deserved. I think he's come in and he's actually been tremendous. And clearly because I picked a Brighton player, I've gone for Steve Cooper.
Ooh, yes, he would have
But
been.
again, I'm trying the same logic where like this is a hard like the assignment he had was very, very hard. Like that's a tough sell to a manager, especially someone who's quite young in his career to be just given like a 30 mercenaries and get to make a tune out of them. And he has done really well. Again, whether he stays at Forest or he gets a kind of proverbial promotion up the league, I don't know. Time will tell, I suppose. But I think he's done really well for his first proper outing, as it were. So now we have fun with this one. Now we get to the worst 11. So I have gone for 4-3-3, Neil, and I will say this 4-3-3 has an exact XG of 0. There are no goals coming from this team. So I'll start off in this one. So I have in goal, and again, it's a bit unfair going by the last game he played, but in goal I have Mark Travers for Bournemouth. Unfortunately, and again, it grieves me to say this as an Irishman, but he is woefully overrated. I'm sure he will come good. He's still very, very young. Like 24 is nothing to a goalkeeper. Again, there's been worse goalkeepers in the league, but I've been strategic here with the placing. Like he is unfortunately a cost for the 9-0 loss to Liverpool. Parker put his kind of hat to him at the start of the season, and it didn't go well. Neto comes in and plays objectively better. And it's only really at the tail end of the season where Travers comes back in and shows a bit of potential. But I think he needs a championship level role to find his feet and to properly get the basics of goalkeeping for me. I don't know. Again, I'm not a goalkeeper. You are. I'd love to hear your views on him, but I feel like he's just missing something. If that makes sense.
Yeah, he is. He's missing a defense.
Okay, fair. Do you know what? Actually, it makes a lot more sense. Yeah. So, yeah, it would help. Yeah. Who's your goalkeeper? Who's your worst goalkeeper this season?
To be honest with you, I went with Travers as well.
Okay.
I don't see. Yeah, he's just. It's not been good. It's a little unfair for him, but he has shipped 32 goals in 11 games,
Mhm.
9 of them to one team. So yeah, I just no, he's not up to. But again, he doesn't have a proper defense. If it couldn't go with the same player that you had, I think Meslier is my close second for that.
I
Actually, fuck
was
it.
very
To keep
close
it,
to
can you
picking
keep
that.
it to keep it different? I'll stick in Meslier there because I don't have another Leeds. I don't have another Leeds player in there. So yeah,
Mhm.
I'll go with Meslier.
Okay, so Melier in for worst goalkeeper. So then we go for a back four then. So my back four, starting off with the centre backs, Harry Maguire, and captain of this calamity. Just an ungodly bad player.
He's
Like
so bad.
he really truly is. But it's like I don't see even at this stage how you could even rate the man. I really, really can't. He just
His media is the same as when they get anybody with any sort of potential,
yeah.
they blow them out of proportion, and then all they can do is fail.
Yeah, like you can actually blame Gareth Southgate for why Harry Maguire still has a career. You really, really could because he still picks him for the England squad, and I don't know how. What
It's
is that based on? It's not
it's
based on
based on the
form.
fact that he's surrounded entirely by cover, whereas at club football level, he doesn't have it. You
Yeah,
know,
it's ludicrous. It's absolute lunacy. And again, every time he's on the pitch, something bad happens. Like he is cursed. He's genuinely fucking cursed. And he's not getting any better. United are not going to be a serious outfit until they get rid of him, and that's the reality of it. Pairing Harry Maguire in centre defence is Kurt Zuma because he kicked a cat. It's nothing to do with his performances. He kicked a cat and therefore deserves to be in this worst 11. However, based on performances, I have picked for my wing backs on the left, Sergio Gomez, who was supposed to be the replacement for Zinchenko in the Manchester City outfit. And I do honestly believe is the reason why Pep Guardiola ditched the wing back principle completely. Because he had that game against, I want to say, in the Champions League. I can't remember who it was, but he had a really, really bad time of it. Leipzig, I think it was, yeah. Leipzig rings a bell. He had a really bad game against Leipzig. And they ended up drawing it in the end, but they should have lost it comprehensively. And I think that was the warning sign for Guardiola to ditch the way just playing wing backs for the sake of it. So that's when he properly switched to Kanji and Stones playing, and Ruben Diaz as well, to be fair, playing those roles.
But you have to tip your head up because a lot of managers just stick to their formation no matter what.
Case in point, Kira, my right back this season is Trent Alexander-Arnold.
yes, I saw that. I saw that you picked
Again,
him as your right back. That's
now,
obviously prior to the tactical shift that Klopp deployed
but here's
later
the
on in
thing:
the
is
season.
he needed to do the tactical switch to get a tune out of Trent, and conversely, it's also to cover for Fabinho. So I could have picked Fabinho in this lineup as well, but I went for Trent because like his defensive performance has been disgraceful. And I know he's not a defensive player. I know his purpose is to be the quarterback of the team. Then play him in a quarterback position. Play him in number 6. Get him fucking out of the right back position and buy a fucking defensive right back. This is not difficult. This is a stylistic choice we've made, and we're getting to the point where we're getting caught out with it. You know, and he's been caught out with it so many times. His tracking back is appalling. Wingers know to just stand on him and wait for the offside track to break, and he looks like he's just kind of fed up in defending. So let him be number 6. Let him be the creative force he's meant to be. Fuck it, let him play his number 10. He's a brilliant number 10. But his ability to be a long ball is too good to keep at that position. So he is my worst right back of the season, and I hope it's a cautionary tale to actually take this position seriously in future. But Neil, how's your defense looking compared to mine?
Interestingly, good thing for this worst 11 is I don't also have the restriction that I place on myself for my best 11, which is no spuds. I can
Ah,
for my worst 11, I can comfortably pick spuds. Um, so I think one of the worst defenders I've seen. Now, I know I changed my goalkeeper because you had the same one, but I won't be changing my centre back choice of Harry Maguire.
mm-hmm.
Um, Alongside him, however, I have Lyanco from Southampton.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, again, as a Hampton defender there makes sense. Makes sense.
He's been absolute trash. Um, but for Tottenham from Spuds, I have Clement Lenglet.
Okay,
been
all right.
atrocious. He's been just awful. He's clueless.
I would have picked Eric Dyer there, to be honest, personally.
No, Dyer is terrible.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in that. But fuck it, like Langlet is just clueless. See, Dyer can play kind of well. Like you see him play for England, and I was like, actually, there's a player there. There's a player there. Whereas with Langley, he's just shite. And my other fullback is Cucurella.
Oh, in fairness, that's a popular choice. He has been
The best
very bad.
description I've ever seen of him was a 62 million pound headless chicken.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that is very, very true.
Yep.
Yeah, very much shown up when he went with Chelsea. So my midfield three is an interesting mix of players that have been dead on arrival and woeful disappointments. So playing as the number 6 in this is Leicester City's Boubakary Samari, who I genuinely think is the worst player I've ever seen play that role. I honestly, I didn't watch much Leicester this season, but the games I did watch of them, I think one of them was against Chelsea. And again, this is not a terrific Chelsea side, but they made mincemeat of Leicester. And the reason they did is because they surrounded this guy in number 6. No, he's a number 42, strictly speaking. But I don't think I've ever seen anyone play as bad in this role as this guy. Like this guy
is proper sack. He's
dreadful.
atrocious.
He's absolutely dreadful in this role because at number 6 is a very bespoke role. You have to make challenges, cut passing lanes, get stuck into challenges. This guy was cowering out of challenges and was not willing to play around. He was not cutting out into. He was not no interceptions, no fouls, nothing like this. He was just letting the game go around him, and any fouls he was making were clumsy, just inherently, and they were in like positions where Chelsea could score free kicks and corners and so forth. So he's a dreadful pick, and if anything as well. He's also an example of why Leicester are relegated because their recruitment, in particular with him and others, have been atrocious. They have not been able to get that Kante Mahrez type of look that they've had with these players. They have, if anything, regressed significantly from there. So he's an example of that. Similarly, Leeds, I have picked Weston McKennie in this worst 11. A player who, quite frankly, has been shown up to be and you can say that about a lot of the American contingent in Leeds. Again, probably not the best example because Jesse Marsh got turfed out before he could properly go Ted Lasso on them and make them believe and all this jazz. But you could put any of them in this category, like Brendan Aronson, Tyler Adams. But Weston McKennie is an example of that because he was a huge get for Leeds. He was massive. To get someone who was the toast of a very bad Juventus side last year. And just be shown to be so ordinary in the Premier League. He probably will get another chance because he is young and he's talented, but this was a rude awakening for him and for a lot of those players in that side. And there was so many I could have picked from this lead side, really. But there are shittier fish to fry in this one. The last person in the midfield is Philip Coutinho from Aston Villa.
Oh, nice. I like it.
Realistically speaking, Steven Gerrard's dependence on him is what got him sacked. Because Gerrard thought he could come in, be the big ego in the room, change club captain on them, change everything around to prioritize Coutinho and begin. Coutinho let them down time and time again because the performances weren't there, and I would not be surprised if he's gone in the summer. He just hasn't got the heights of what he can be, what he's capable of. I think he has just basically lost the love for football. Now again, you got Emery in who could do that. He could reignite that fire, and if he does, his Aston Villa team are Champions League bound. I do solidly believe that, but I don't see it happening. I think Coutinho is well and truly gone. So he's in my worst 11 for that exact reason. So Neil, how's your midfield looking?
My midfield 3 goes like this. Excuse me, sorry. I have Coutinho as well. I think he was garbage. I also have John Joe Shelby.
Ooh, Shelby, of course.
He was terrible, as I always knew he was.
Yeah.
Why does nobody listen to me? I know nothing. I do know nothing. And my other actually midfielder there is Calvin Phillips.
Yeah, a good pick for Man City because he was just fucking nothing. Just
Yeah.
like yeah, you can
He,
be
he,
point.
he-
He is there. He is the modern day Jack Rodwell. And that is
yeah,
not a joke. Yeah,
only signed for extortionately more money.
yeah, pretty much. Signed for the exact same reason. He's English. We
Yeah.
need them. Yeah, fucking ludicrous.
There's my
Um,
my midfield, my empty midfield three. My like I'm looking at that, I'm going, wow, that's three nothing jerseys.
yeah, and that's same with me. It's like I wouldn't trust to have a midfield three for anything. Like, good Jesus Christ. Now I would say that, but my front three is so much more worse. So, on the right, I've got Michaela Mudryk. Again, very much an example of Chelsea's overindulgence and extortionate just attempts to price everyone out of the market and just playing themselves at the end of the day. They don't need those players. They don't need to sign any of those players they needed. And Mudryk is just a good example of that. They signed Mudryk because they didn't want Arsenal to have him, and that's the reality of it. Um, and they could say that about tons of other players they've signed. Did they really need Joe Felix? Did they really need Enzo Fernandez? Like in the grand scheme of things, probably not. You know, but
They
I could
probably
have picked
will
any
sign
player.
Joe Felix.
You know, well maybe. I mean, I could have picked Joe Felix. I could have picked Aubameyang again. Very much like an example of that stagnancy. I could have picked Sterling. I was spoiled with choice with Chelsea players this year.
You could have literally just
Unfortunately,
put the Chelsea team.
you really could, and that would not be which one? There's three of them, Neil. To be fair, um, so on the actually playing as my number 9 is Neil Maupay, for Everton, because like I think objectively he is the most overrated player in the league in my opinion. I don't have any quarrel in saying that. I think he's someone who has lived off the hype from a championship run in Brentford years ago, where he was objectively very, very good, but then Brentford make everybody look good. Then he was in a Brighton side where he started getting shown up for being a very poor striker, very poor forward, and his great skill in life is to get other people annoyed. That's his skill. He's basically a fart in an elevator. That's what his great skill is. And the sheer fact that again another symptom of how Everton just cannot improve their squad when it comes to actually getting striker options, that is the best they could get was Neil Maupay, who was, I think, pound for pound, one of the worst strikers in Premier League history. Not to be outdone by the captain of this particularly terrible team, Richarlison for Spurs. Um, it really warmed the cockles of my heart. The fact that the only goal he scored in the Premier League this season was at Anfield, where he thought that was a goal that was going to essentially confirm that Spurs are back in the hunt for Champions League football and take us out of it, only for Jota to score literally 30 seconds later. That Schadenfreude, if you can even call it that, will warm my cockles of my heart for days and weeks and months to come. The fact that, like, in particular, Richarlison had such a shit day of it, where he goes through the entire season, like he is one of the bigger signings for Spurs that season. He's the backup to Kane and anyone else who falters in that system, and he comes in and all he does is just flop around the face like he's been fucking shot in the back of the head. Like he's an absolutely atrocious footballer. A one good goal in the World Cup does not deserve whatever reputation he's getting. He's an absolutely terrible footballer, and quite frankly, Spurs deserve him. It's the best way I can describe it because now they're fucking stuck with him through thick or thin. Like when Kane goes, Richarlison's going to be their first choice striker, and oh my god, that's going to be hilarious. So,
Jesus Christ, I might actually fucking start watching a lot more Spurs games in that case.
exactly. So Neil, you are left with your front three then in that case, and who have you got lined up?
I got Melpe as well, because he's garbage.
Yeah.
He is trash for every single reason that you've just stated there.
Mm-hmm.
It's been fucking terrible. I had to rejig it because I initially did have Bamford there, but
Mm.
because I switched to Meslier, um, duh, 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 duh. um, my other one is Skamaka as a
Yeah, that's
forward.
a good choice. Another
He's just been that 35 million pound would have done better if they'd have just piled it in the middle of a pitch and burnt it.
Yeah, that's fair.
They were fucking awful. Um, so yeah, that's just brilliant. And my final one, fuck yeah, I couldn't go with him because I got Shelby there. I was gonna go with Lingard, but no, wasn't that it? Um, I suppose what's my final one? Can I have to change this all? Oh, actually, here, fucking. My final one has been Sancho, Jaden
Ooh,
Sancho.
yeah.
He has been fucking terrible.
You have two more players there anyway. Then because
Fuck,
you have
did I not?
Maguire.
Is that two? It's two United players. Oh,
Yeah,
fuck yeah, I had Maguire. Bollocks. Hang
you don't have any
on.
Chelsea. Yeah, unless you're keeping Chelsea for manager role, you don't have any Chelsea players in yet.
No, I got Cucurella at the back.
Oh yeah, Cucurella, quite right actually. Yeah.
Shit, yeah, because fucking I shouldn't have been generous and fucking switched at the end.
But then you can switch back then. Like have Travers and then you can have Bamford up front. Then that solves your problems. Then.
Yeah.
Right.
Do that.
So you have Bamford up front. Yeah.
Yeah.
Grant. So then we go to the managers of my team, and again, we mentioned them already. I had to pick Nathan Jones for this, mainly because I already picked Everton and Chelsea, so I couldn't pick Frank Lampard, who I think is genuinely nicking a living, based on who he is and who he knows. But Nathan Jones has been an absolute disaster, and I think he's nuked his reputation faster than Tim Sherwood in a fucking Hadron Collider. So I think Jones has been he's one of those he is like the modern day Joe Kinnear. Where Joe Kinnear, all he had to do was sit down at a press conference, shout some racist expletives at journalists, and he was a made man for memes to come. Where Nathan Jones is the same thing, except he didn't have to be racist, except against the Welsh. But yeah, I mean, does that even count? So yeah, definitely by far the worst manager of the lot. So yeah, I think he would lead this team to glory and happiness.
I would fully agree with you that skill-wise, he is the worst manager. Well, easily one of the worst managers around, possibly ever. But the reason why he doesn't make my list is not because I've also picked players from his team. It's because for me, he was just so fucking entertaining. I was just laughing.
I know. There's that level to it, yeah.
My manager has no entertainment value and is also terrible. And you can tell by the fact that I have no Leicester players on my team. Is Shark Teeth himself.
Brendan Rodgers, yeah. I think a lot of people have been waiting for him to be found out. Really, like the hubris and arrogance.
But we've been saying this for fucking years.
I know.
How is he still considered an elite tier manager? How?
Again, a lot of it has something to do with he just gets a bit of success here and there, as like there's a little moments of success or interpreted success, like oh he's done a good job there, or whatever it is, and like I said, I don't dislike Brendan, I really don't, because in another world he would have been a Premier League winning manager, and that's bizarre for me to say, like that's just a defined margin of it, but at the same token, there's a very fine line between being king shit and then just shit, in a very cruel way of saying that,
Maybe no, I do dislike him because fundamentally, like he is one of the main reasons that Leicester are fucked. It was him who was coming out at the very beginning and going, 40 points is going to be our aim, and everybody was shocked that he set the bar that low. But then that was before a ball had been kicked. That was back in August. So like. And people wonder where the despondency and the complacency from the players came from.
Yeah.
It comes from him. Like the players don't pick this up by themselves. Like this came from him. Like, yeah, they didn't really back him financially. But as we said before, this squad is good enough to finish above relegation. This squad is good enough to finish in the top half of the table. So he couldn't get that out of that. Why? Because he wasn't back to the hilt. And if he's not going to get exactly what he wants, even though he already has what he wants, or has what he needs of all these, he's going to throw his toys out of the pram and say, oh yeah, we're aiming for 40 points. I was like, what the fuck? Who says that at the very beginning of a season even as well? Like, who the fuck? How did he think that was going to be a good idea? Was that going to light a fire under the owners and they're going to start throwing money at him? I was like, it was very obvious that the new owner doesn't have the affection for the club that his dad did.
Mm.
So just work with that. Like you still have good enough players. Like you still have good that God is good enough. Like you big it up.
Yeah.
Don't talk shit about your own fucking squad. As
Yeah,
your own
that's fair.
striker famously said, "Chat shit, get banged."
And indeed they did, Neil. They,
Oh
they
yes,
really did get banged in the end.
yeah.
And as they will be in the championship where they replace the Etihad and Anfield for St Andrews and and the Bet365 arena in Stoke. Oh god.
Otherwise known as
Anyway,
twinned with Mordor.
Mordor. But in any case, guys, that's the end of our Premier League autopsy, and we are going to be back with an edition of the podcast in a couple of weeks' time when the dust is settled from all the various cup finals around England and Europe. And we may be staring down the face of a Manchester City treble, and if we are going to despair and drink very, very quickly into the podcast. But we are also going to be ending on a high, an optimistic note, because we will be previewing the Women's World Cup coming up very, very soon, because we do have a vested interest in that, and certainly we'll be looking at what is kind of going to be a very intriguing competition, considering the sheer amount of world-class players missing from it. So it's kind of leveling out the playing field a little bit, but
all of them for pretty much the exact same fucking reason.
for the exact same reason, exactly. So we'll get into that when it's due course. But for now, Neil, thank you very much for joining me for this deluxe episode. We are both going to bed after this. It's fair to say. We're all Premier League dead at this stage. But if you've made it to the end, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this edition of the podcast. By all means, feel free to go through all of our back catalogue and enjoy all of our other ramblings over the season and see were we consistent with our hot takes and thought process. Chances are we probably weren't.
No, fuck no.
No. I knew it even when I was saying it, to be fair.
Yeah.
But either way, thank you very much for listening. If you have done over the season and hopefully you've been entertained by our dulcet tones over the season, thank you very much for listening. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks when we preview the Women's World Cup at et al. But for now, all of that was liquid football.